An injured, pink-haired woman, lying in darkness, reflects with sorrow that she was never truly loved. The injured woman lies dead amid scattered flowers and blood, questioning how she met such a tragic end. Camille Oxalis, a young girl, sadly recounts being born as the daughter of a duke and a commoner. Camille recalls being despised by servants as a mistress's daughter, her father ignoring her in favor of a young Catalea, his daughter with a royal lady, who received all his care and attention. Catalea, a cheerful pink-haired girl, smiles about her frail sister's inability to use magic and vows to do anything for her. Catalea observes Camille, remarking on her simple dress. Catalea extends her hands, offering a yellow ribbon to Camille. Camille expresses heartfelt gratitude, smiling brightly as she receives the ribbon from Catalea. The father cruelly questions if Catalea truly gifted the ribbon, making Camille, who recalls Catalea's words, react with a surprised denial regarding her sister. The father clarifies to Camille that he only lent the ribbon, as a sinister Catalea smiles, revealing her true intentions. A figure raises a knife over a kneeling woman with purple hair, suggesting a violent threat. Camille, overwhelmed by a sense of resignation, believes she can only endure as a mistress's child, depicted as a puppet manipulated by her smiling father and a gleeful Catalea. A horse-drawn carriage travels through a serene, tree-lined path under a soft sky. Catalea, sitting beside her father, excitedly anticipates attending the ball in the royal capital. Catalea expresses joyful agreement, beaming brightly. Camille, seated in the carriage, worries about making the Majesty and the Crown Prince wait. Her father sternly questions Camille if she is dissatisfied with his decision, causing her to nervously deny it. Catalea cheerfully urges Camille to enjoy their family vacation. Camille internally reflects that neither her sister nor her father is at fault, she is simply too serious, and finds comfort that Catalea still calls her big sister. Catalea and her father sit together, with Catalea smiling contentedly. Catalea joyfully exclaims upon seeing the capital, eagerly looking out from the carriage. Camille smiles, finding the view beautiful. Catalea laughs, shading her eyes and exclaiming about how cool the sight is. The father gestures, asking Catalea, where, as Camille looks on. Catalea waves goodbye, declaring she's off, leaving the father and Camille behind. Camille, in her yellow dress, reflects on worrying too much and resolves to talk to her family more. Camille smiles softly, appearing pensive. Camille looks surprised as she addresses her father. The father forcefully pushes Camille off a steep cliff, with blood appearing to spray in the red-tinged background. The father, with a pained expression, reaches out his hands in distress. Camille falls, glowing, as the father apologizes, stating they only want Catalea to marry the crown prince. The father, with a sinister smile, orders Camille to die, explaining that her impure blood would complicate Catalea's path to becoming queen. Camille plummets through darkness, her body falling helplessly. A hand offers a bag with flowers to the falling Camille, who, with blood on her face, reflects that she now understands she was never truly loved. Camille sadly realizes she wasn't really loved, despite her own excitement, as a bright sky shines. A light blue dress and flowers are gently placed on the ground, surrounded by scattered petals. Camille floats amidst shattered glass, her consciousness fading as she accepts her approaching death. Camille lies peacefully, adorned with dark flowers, embracing an eternal sleep from which she will never awaken, free from suffering. A man and woman lovingly hold a baby, surrounded by vibrant flowers, as the man wipes away tears. The man looks overwhelmed with emotion and surprise, his eyes wide and glistening. The woman smiles warmly, her eyes sparkling with happiness. The man closes his eyes, a tear rolling down his cheek, smiling with deep emotion. Baby anemone, with captivating green eyes and light blue hair, is named while nestled among colorful flowers. The man joyfully holds baby anemone aloft, expressing heartfelt gratitude. The woman smiles blissfully, her eyes closed in contentment. The man and woman look on with concern as baby anemone appears surprised. Baby anemone cries out, questioning why she was born again against a backdrop of swirling stars. A beautifully decorated, empty cradle stands ready in a grand room. Sunlight streams dazzlingly through a large window, filling the room with light. Camille reflects on her death and how she should have gone into an eternal slumber, as images of her falling from the cliff and lying dead are shown. A young girl with pink hair stares with unsettling eyes as a man with a mustache stands in the dark, wishing haunting memories would disappear. A baby with light blue hair cries profusely, tears streaming down its face. A young boy in a blue coat stands by a delicate cradle, looking at the baby within. The young boy reflects sadly that the baby cries all the time. The young boy, identified as the Crown Prince of Laikal, dismisses the maid's concern, asserting his right to be there. Jean, the crown prince, confidently declares that he is the baby's brother, leaving the maid speechless. King Ansonia warns Cecilia not to annoy someone too much, while standing together in regal attire. Jean joyfully greets his father, King Ansonia, and Cecilia, expressing his fondness for Anemone. Jean looks down with a concerned expression. A grand palace stands proudly, representing the royal family Anemone was born into as the Princess of Lycaul. 3 armored knights stand ready, symbolizing the kingdom's strength and protection. King Ansonia, holding a glowing artifact, developed Lycaul through technology and magic, leading to the creation of magic tools, while mages cast spells. Lycaul's advancements have solidified its status as a respected member of the world's nations. King Ansonia and Cecilia lovingly look at baby Anemone. Noting she is still sleepy, Jean playfully tugs at King Ansonia's coat, a happy expression on his face. Cecilia gently advises both King Ansonia and Jean to be careful so Anemone doesn't wake up. The royal family, King Ansonia, Cecilia, Jean, and baby Anemone, stands together in a heartwarming portrait. The royal family, like the sun, guides its people, a truly dazzling sight. King Ansonia kindly asks Jean if he has completed his training and classes. Jean, with a cheerful smile, assures King Ansonia he finished his morning tasks and plans to meet the Magic Tower researchers later. Jean looks on with a gentle, introspective smile. A dark background with withered flowers hints at a painful past and unchanging despair. Catleya's father stands over a collapsed Camille, who is pale and unwell, angrily demanding she endure the poison. Camille, visibly suffering, struggles to use traditional magic to neutralize the poison as her father berates her. Camille doubles over in pain, clutching her stomach as her father, calling her a shameful scourge, expresses disgust. Camille, distressed, apologizes while realizing her own father poisoned her food, questioning why. Catleya, in a purple dress, kneels beside Camille, asking if her sister is all right. Camille weakly responds, then anxiously asks if Catleya also received poison, while Catleya observes her sister with concern. Catleya's eyes glow red as she internalizes that her sister suffered because Catleya was not strong enough. Catleya's father demands she thank him for the magic training, while Catleya understands the immense burden it placed on Camille. Camille kneels, looking lost and fearful, calling out to her father and Catleya. Catleya approaches her father, asking for his help with Camille, and her eyes glow menacingly after he agrees. Camille, horrified, tells Catleya to stop as Catleya approaches with a steaming bowl and an unsettling smile. Catleya reassures Camille, saying she is here for her. The narrator, a mistress's child with no magical gifts, endured poison and inhumane treatment, reflecting on never knowing love. Shattered glass and darkness represent a soul filled only with fear and horror, devoid of family or love. Jean, surrounded by flowers, smiles warmly and encourages Anemone to open her eyes to a new reality. Jean lovingly holds baby Anemone, addressing her as his dear sister. Jean affectionately calls Anemone a blessed, sweet child, stating the world grieves when she cries. Anemone, as the narrator, rejects empty kind words, as Jean, Cecilia, and King Ansonia look at her with love. Jean vows to be braver than anyone else to protect Anemone. King Ansonia and Cecilia share a tender look, promising Anemone their love and protection. Jean gently holds Anemone, affectionately whispering her name. King Ansonia, carrying a doll and other gifts, smiles warmly at Anemone. King Ansonia gently cradles Anemone, presenting a gift to his daughter. Cecilia tenderly kisses baby Anemone's head, holding her close. Cecilia smiles radiantly, embracing baby Anemone with boundless love. Cecilia stands gracefully in a bright room, holding baby Anemone and surrounded by soft pink flowers. Jean, with a cheerful smile, greets the sleeping Anemone, calling her his sleeping beauty. Jean smiles brightly, his eyes sparkling with warmth. A bright room holds multiple easels and a single stool, ready for an art session. Cecilia tenderly holds baby Anemone, both radiating gentle smiles while bathed in soft light. Cecilia and baby Anemone pose on a grand sofa as 2 artists diligently paint their portrait. Jean and King Ansonia gaze intently, both appearing surprised or thoughtfully considering something. Jean questions the quality of a painting before him, remarking that the subjects, Anemone and Cecilia, look much more adorable in person. Jean chastises the painters, asking if they still wish to be court painters, and urging them to create more lovely and beautiful art, as King Ansonia looks on with a displeased expression. 3 artists, holding their brushes, force-strained, awkward smiles. Cecilia and baby Anemone pose gracefully, while the artists' canvases in the foreground display abstract, unidentifiable paintings. Jean bows to Cecilia, who holds Anemone, stating he must continue his training. Jean smiles warmly as he says goodbye to Anemone, promising to see her soon. John lovingly kisses baby Anemone's forehead, surrounded by delicate flowers. Jean diligently studies at a desk, while an older man with glasses attentively reads a book beside him. Jean, holding a book and a glowing flask, observes an older man with long hair, likely one of the Magic Tower researchers. Jean stands amidst blooming flowers, reflecting on the demanding training, lack of freedom, and constant scrutiny he faces as Crown Prince, as baby Anemone peacefully sleeps below. A past memory is shown where Katala's father, mother, and a young Katala smile happily, prompting a dark thought about unfairness. Then an older Katala looks displeased, questioning if it's outrageous. Jean looks troubled, realizing Anemone is still sleeping and fears prolonged sleep could indicate a serious disease, wondering what action to take. Jean frantically clutches his head, suggesting they bring Anemone to a hospital or summon a healer, declaring the entire country must unite to cure her. Baby Anemone sleeps soundly, adorned with 2 delicate hair ribbons. Man in a brown coat pulls a woman in a yellow dress off a red, jagged cliff, revealing a perilous and dark scene. A woman with light pink hair lies on the ground amidst scattered flowers and bloodstains, a discarded bag nearby. A dark background with withered leaves appears as the narrator Anemone expresses a preference for remaining in slumber rather than reliving past pain. Jean looks utterly shocked, calling out a name in distress. A young Jean, with scratches on his face, looks somber while surrounded by white flowers. King Ansonia, Cecilia, and a maid look visibly shocked, with King Ansonia asking what happened to Jean. Cecilia, holding baby Anemone, looks surprised, as does Jean. Jean, smiling widely, stands next to a sleeping Anemone, surrounded by delicate white flowers. Jean lovingly holds a large, colorful bouquet of flowers. Jean smiles brightly, his face framed by the vibrant bouquet he holds. Baby Anemone sleeps peacefully, nestled amidst an array of colorful flowers. King Ansonia looks thoughtfully at Jean, suggesting the gardener could have provided the flowers if Jean had simply asked. Jean, holding the bouquet, insists he must personally give the flowers directly to Anemone. King Ansonia and Jean share a focused gaze, one serious, the other slightly apprehensive. Cecilia smiles serenely, cradling a sleeping baby Anemone. Baby Anemone sleeps, surrounded by flowers, with a faint thought bubble, wondering if the gifts are for her. Cecilia looks surprised, holding Anemone amidst blooming pink flowers. Jean and King Ansonia look at something with wide-eyed surprise. Baby Anemone's eyes are wide open with surprise, looking up and surrounded by shimmering blue flowers, indicating her awakening. Maids meticulously clean a grand palace hall, preparing it for an event. A maid gently holds baby Anemone, who is now awake and looks around with curiosity. King Ansonia, Jean, and various officials stand formally in a line, perhaps for an official ceremony. Cecilia gazes adoringly at baby Anemone, both surrounded by beautiful blue flowers. Jean reflects that the people already recognized him, not realizing the ceremony for Anemone's awakening was taking place today. Cecilia, with a radiant smile, playfully interacts with an awake baby Anemone. Young Jean looks away, a subtle expression on his face. Young Jean looks at the older Jean, as Cecilia holds Anemone nearby, thinking she might have made him mad and that he's likely not okay. Baby Anemone looks up with wide, wondering eyes, surrounded by sparkling light, marking her miraculous awakening. A graceful woman with long blue hair stands elegantly beside a unicorn within a golden, framed portrait. Cecilia cradles baby Anemone, while King Ansonia stands by her side in a grand, sunlit room. Jean receives a golden book from King Ansonia, who smiles proudly. The dark-haired man presents a golden sword to Jean, who looks up with a cheerful smile. King Ansonia holds out a necklace with a blue gem to Jean, who reaches for it. During the Crown Prince's oath-taking ceremony, a ring with a blue gem is placed on Jean's finger. Jean stands proudly adorned in his full uniform, necklace, and ring, signifying his official status. A magnificent castle, the royal palace of Lycol, stands majestically amidst mountains and trees. Cecilia and older Jean admire younger Jean, who holds baby Anemone, with older Jean commenting that the outfit looks cute on you, and Cecilia thinking Anemone looks wonderful. Jean looks wide-eyed and surprised, reacting to the ongoing events around him. Older Jean and Cecilia smile, as older Jean explains that fireworks and a countrywide parade will follow the ceremony. Cecilia and both versions of Jean smile happily, with older Jean declaring his intention to tell the entire country how adorable Anemone is, and Cecilia looking forward to it. Baby Anemone, wearing a pink bow, thinks about Jean's oath ceremony and laments that her birth is not just a bonus. Older Jean entrusts baby Anemone to younger Jean, asking him to take care of Anemone, while he and Cecilia greet other guests. A grand palace hall is bustling with formally dressed guests attending an event. Younger Jean gently holds baby anemone, smiling sweetly amid soft pink flowers, as two indistinct men stand behind him. Younger Jean looks down at baby anemone, observing her reaction to the crowd, and asks if she dislikes noisy places, to which anemone mentally replies, "It's not a surprise." Jean continues to look at anemone, thinking it's a coincidence because he also dislikes crowds. Younger Jean walks through the formal hall, carefully holding baby anemone while passing by various courtiers. Younger Jean smiles, cradling baby anemone, as three women gaze at them with adoring smiles. Younger Jean bows deeply to the smiling women in the elegant hall. Two women beam with delight and exclaim, "Oh, how cute," at the sight of Jean and anemone. Anemone's eyes narrow slightly, showing an internal thought represented by ellipses as she observes her surroundings. Younger Jean winks and smiles brightly, still holding baby anemone close to him. Younger Jean looks down at a sleeping anemone, wondering if she is still 9 years old. Duke Oxalis bows to younger Jean, who holds anemone, expressing his honor to meet His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Baby anemone's eyes are wide with surprise, capturing a moment of sudden awareness. In a dark memory, a shadowy figure raises a weapon over a cowering Camille, surrounded by withered roses. A man pulls a woman, Catalia's mother, from the edge of a jagged, red cliff in a disturbing flashback. Duke Oxalis smiles, a slight smirk on his face, observing the scene. Duke Oxalis congratulates younger Jean, who holds anemone, on the ceremony. Jean greets Duke Oxalis as anemone looks on with a surprised expression. Anemone thinks that everyone must know about the Oxalis family of the Kingdom of Anphis, as she quietly observes Duke Oxalis. Duke Oxalis looks visibly shocked, his eyes wide in surprise. Duke Oxalis remarks that Princess Anemone is even cuter than the rumors say. Anemone, looking unimpressed, thinks about Duke Oxalis. Recognizing him, Duke Oxalis looks at Jean holding Anemone, while Anemone internally notes that he also does not know her true identity. Duke Oxalis extends his hand with a polite smile, seemingly to interact with Anemone. Jean instinctively shields Anemone with his arm, preventing a faceless guard from approaching, as Duke Oxalis watches intently. Duke Oxalis reaches out towards Jean, attempting to take baby Anemone from his arms. A hand emerges from darkness, revealing a thought that it's light work for him to administer a curse without people knowing, hinting at Duke Oxalis's sinister capabilities. Baby Anemone's eyes are closed, a faint glow emanating from her, suggesting a hidden power activating. Wah! Duke Oxalis recoils in shock as a bright electric light bursts from his hand, indicating a magical backlash. Duke Oxalis, looking startled, questions what happened while a guard reassures him that it's nothing. Jean looks on, surprised, as a determined Anemone thinks, "I won't allow you to touch my family." Duke Oxalis looks with clear surprise at Jean and Anemone. King Ansonia and Cecilia ask if Jean and Anemone are okay, with Jean assuring them that they are. Baby Anemone looks drowsy and tired, thinking she is so sleepy and feeling worn out. Jean looks down at a sleeping Anemone with a concerned expression. Jean stands, cradling a peacefully sleeping Anemone, bathed in a soft golden glow. Ha. Jean laughs joyfully, holding the sleeping Anemone while King Ansonia and Cecilia smile in the background. Jean smiles broadly, holding a sleeping Anemone, and happily concludes that his little sister is the reincarnation of a saint. Jean smiles brightly, holding a vibrant bouquet of colorful flowers. Duke Renaud Adowal sits on a lavish couch, observing the blonde-bearded man who attentively reads a book opposite him. Duke Renaud Adowal muses that it seems that these shoddy products are all the rage these days. The blonde-bearded man listens with a serious, slightly displeased expression. Anemone, in a pink dress, arrives and greets the blonde-bearded man. "It has been a while, grandfather." The blonde-bearded man smiles kindly at Anemone. Anemone's thought identifies Duke Renaud Adowal as her mother, Queen Levine's father, overseeing the kingdom's magic law office. A detailed shot shows an ornate pink potion bottle, a book, and other magical artifacts on a table. The blonde-bearded man explains the potion is disguised so well that you wouldn't be able to tell that it's a fake, while Anemone wishes she could somehow see the difference. The ornate pink potion bottle and various magical items are displayed on the table. Duke Renaud Adowal watches as the blonde-bearded man speaks to Anemone. Anemone looks forward intently, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The ornate pink potion bottle glows with a soft, internal light. Anemone exclaims, "Oh," as the blonde-bearded man reveals the real potion reacts to mana, and the non-reacting ones are fakes. The blonde-bearded man gestures while speaking to Duke Renaud Adowal, with Anemone and a maid in the background. Anemone looks thoughtful, with the blonde, bearded man standing behind her. Anemone reflects on unknown dangers, as an older man and Catalea appear smiling sinisterly in the background. Anemone calmly sips from a teacup, looking composed. Anemone walks alone through a grand palace hall, followed by two uniformed men. Anemone, the blonde-bearded man, and Duke Renoa Doal excitedly watch a magical plant sprout, Anemone holding a glowing seed. Anemone, the blonde-bearded man, and Duke Renoa Doal celebrate as the plant magically blooms into a rose. Cecilia holds a young Anemone, who reaches out to a hooded figure conjuring sparkling light. A close-up shows Anemone's glowing green eyes mirrored by similar eyes, emphasizing their unique ability. Anemone walks through a vast library, reflecting that her ability to see mana is because of these eyes. Anemone reads a book, thinking she has learned to read letters and understand some ancient language. A pink-haired girl, Kataya, sits huddled in a dark room as Anemone narrates about being locked up with no knowledge of the outside world. Anemone reflects on her past self as a stupid, useless, and an unsuspecting idiot, contrasting it with a vision of Catalia and her father, declaring, "But now, it's different." Anemone reaches for a book with determination. Catalia and her father smile, exuding a subtle, sinister aura. Anemone reads intently, thinking she needs to prepare for what's to come. Catalia, the bride, walks arm in arm with a man in a brown suit, adored by the nobility and the people. Catalea's father smiles to a crowd, while narration describes the Duchess's death-winning hearts. Catalea lies on the ground, thinking they used my death as bait and lived happily, huh? Anemone stands in a library, thinking she also have things I want to protect. A hand offers Anemone a book, which she reaches for with a soft swoosh. Jean smiles, holding a book. Anemone looks up with curious, wide eyes. Jean offers Anemone a book amidst blooming blue flowers. Jean smiles gently, his eyes sparkling. Anemone eagerly reaches for the book, appearing surprised and delighted. Anemone mentally scolds Jean for forgetting a promise while daydreaming, while Jean sits lost in thought at a table. Jean apologizes for forgetting the time and not noticing it was already evening, while Anemone is seen happily reading in a library. Jean and Anemone sit opposite each other at a table, both immersed in their books. Anemone looks up from her book, asking Jean, "Brother, what is the divine beast?" Jean explains that the divine beast is the leader of light magic that brings purity and peace. Jean and Anemone sit across the table from each other, both focused on their books. Jean explains that magic in the atmosphere circulates and changes shape, returning to the atmosphere after being used from within the body. Jean warns Anemone about replenishing magic if she doesn't heal, then playfully teases her that he will run out of things to teach you real quick. Anemone smiles brightly, surrounded by sparkling blue flowers. Jean observes Anemone, noting that this person hates to lose, huh? I don't. Jean smiles brightly, stating he thinks it's great, as a surprised Anemone holds a book. Anemone questions why Jean recommends everything except the library, to which Jean replies that first-hand experience differs from book knowledge. Jean smiles broadly, resting his hand on his face, amid a sparkling background. Jean excitedly tells Anemone he will book a reservation for an act and invite the kingdom's best band. Anemone expresses feeling bad about Jean wasting his precious vacation time on her. A uniformed man informs Jean, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, it's about time," as Jean sits with Anemone nearby. Jean, looking determined, declares he will do anything for Anemone's sake, surrounded by sparkling light. Anemone mentally notes that her brother is very kind, yet she harbors secrets from him. A man calls for Lady Anemone, who stands by an open door. The man informs Anemone that Her Royal Highness the Queen is calling for you, prompting Anemone to ask, "Mother." Cecilia and Anemone sit at a table elegantly laid with tea and pastries. Cecilia calls Anemone's name, as a close-up highlights the delightful array of desserts and tea on the table. Anemone wonders, what could Mother be calling me for while standing next to the man? Anemone, holding a teacup, ponders if the discussion will be about the magic school. Cecilia smiles radiantly, adorned with intricate jewelry. Cecilia sits opposite Anemone at the table, while Anemone considers something the teacher said. A man with glasses and a mustache holds a flask and a pocket watch, as Anemone wonders if he is the visiting teacher. Cecilia beams with a wide, heartfelt smile. Anemone sips her tea thoughtfully, seated at the table by a window showing blooming roses outside. Anemone expresses her concern to Cecilia, stating she is only 6 years old and would stand out like a sore thumb at the magic school. Cecilia reassures Anemone that they will support her wholeheartedly. Anemone, looking wide-eyed and surprised, hesitates, uttering, "But." Anemone looks up with a worried expression. Cecilia assures Anemone that they'll surely support you, Anemone. Anemone, surrounded by sparkling blue flowers, responds with a simple, "Good." Cecilia smiles gently, framed by soft yellow flowers in the background. Cecilia and Anemone sit across from each other at the table, enjoying tea and sweets. Cecilia smiles at Anemone, her hands clasped on the table, with pastries and tea in the foreground. A hand gently covers a seemingly distressed Anemone's face in a blurry close-up. The pink-haired woman, Ketelea, smiles sinisterly while holding a tray, as a purple-haired woman, Camille, cries on the floor with spilt liquid around her. A magnificent, illuminated castle stands majestically atop a hill at night, nestled amidst mountains and trees. Anemone sits alone in a grand room, looking pensive, with books stacked on a table beside her. Jean, looking concerned, encourages Anemone, "If you ever need anything, feel free to rely on me." Anemone looks out through an ornate window, contemplating, is there any meaning in abandoning this happiness for the sake of revenge? A light-colored curtain is drawn across a decorative window, revealing bare tree branches outside against the night sky. Anemone lies in bed, staring upwards with a thoughtful expression. Anemone closes her eyes, lamenting, "I don't know, all I feel is tiredness." Anemone and 3 other young girls enjoy an outdoor tea party under a gazebo, served by a maid. 2 young girls smile joyfully at the tea party, one holding a teacup and the other a pastry. A blonde girl offers Anemone a pastry, informing her it was made by their chef. A red-haired girl offers Anemone tea, explaining its wonderful flavor comes from tea leaves from the east. The red-haired girl enthusiastically says the tea sounds wonderful and she will ask her father about it next time. Anemone, seen from behind, observes that everyone is only talking about themselves. Anemone sips her tea, looking unimpressed, while the red-haired girl animatedly speaks beside her. The red-haired girl proudly exclaims she used magic properly last time, and her tutor praised her, radiating a bright aura. Anemone and the other 2 girls look surprised, as Anemone thinks controlling magical power should be difficult for a child. The red-haired girl glows with a burst of magical light, holding a radiating orb of energy. A forceful magic backlash splits the ground with cracks across the panel. Anemone reacts in shock, crying, "Wah!" while the red-haired girl and the other girl huddle together and teacups fall and spill amidst the spreading cracks. The blonde girl cries out in despair, clutching her head as a powerful magic backlash causes cracks to splinter across the ground. The blue-haired girl, the source of the magic, looks utterly terrified, extending a hand as the ground continues to crack around her. The blue-haired girl desperately embraces the blonde girl, both closing their eyes tightly amidst the magical turmoil. A close-up shows the back of the blue-haired girl's head, still with a small flower accessory, as a pastry remains on a nearby table. The tea party is completely ruined, with dishes, pastries, and utensils strewn across the cracked floor. The blue-haired girl kneels on the shattered ground in distress, while Anemone and the blonde girl observe her with worried expressions. A close-up on the blue-haired girl's anxious eye highlights the severity of the situation, as a stern warning proclaims that magic isn't something to play with. The blue-haired girl shouts angrily at the blonde girl, who covers her mouth in shock and fear. The blonde girl looks utterly distraught and begins to cry, tears welling in her eyes. The blue-haired girl appears taken aback and surprised by the blonde girl's emotional reaction. Anemone stands calmly, observing the blonde girl and the gray-haired girl huddled together, thinking her actions should resolve the hostility. Anemone closes her eyes in deep thought, while the blonde girl and the gray-haired girl stare blankly. Anemone, with a somber expression, reassures herself with a quiet thought, "It's okay." Anemone walks away, following a tall, indistinct adult figure. Ryuka, a young blonde boy with green eyes, smiles brightly amidst sparkling flowers in a garden. Ryuka formally introduces himself to Anemone. Ryuka offers Anemone a small, folded piece of paper, smiling charmingly. Anemone, with tears in her eyes, sincerely thanks Ryuka. Ryuka praises Anemone's impressive courage for taking responsibility to prevent another from being blamed. Anemone, wiping a tear, is astonished by Ryuka's intelligence and offers to serve him if possible. Anemone asks if Ryuka means to serve her, and he confirms his desire to be her knight. Anemone and Ryuka stand facing each other, with Anemone holding the paper and looking thoughtful. A close-up of Anemone reveals her pensive and slightly melancholic expression. Ryuka walks away, his back to the viewer, across an elegant tiled floor. Anemone looks forward with a firm, determined expression. Ryuka beams with joy as Anemone's father places a hand on his shoulder. Ryuka's face is filled with happiness, his eyes closed in a wide smile, surrounded by soft white flowers. Ryuka stands smiling broadly next to Anemone's father, who rests a hand on his shoulder. Ryuka, with a radiant smile, promises to serve Her Highness despite his perceived capabilities. Anemone's father explains that Ryuka is also Cecilia's son, A narration panel reveals that the Gabella family is renowned for their knights, showing Cecilia holding a baby and Anemone's father. Anemone's father informs her that Cecilia wants Ryuka to be her conversation partner and asks Anemone for her opinion. Anemone, looking pensive but composed, thanks her father. Anemone's father smiles and waves goodbye as he exits the room. Anemone and Ryuka sit opposite each other at a tea table in a lavish room. A close-up shows Anemone holding a teacup with a reserved expression. Ryuka smiles gently while sipping his tea, looking at Anemone. Ryuka's eyes are closed in a cheerful, radiant smile. Anemone looks surprised by something Ryuka has said. Anemone's father explains he learned about her from Prince Jean and noticed her helpfulness earlier. A close-up highlights the intricate details of Ryuka's vest and shirt. Ryuka asks Anemone if she understands the term for being captivated by someone at first glance. Ryuka smiles charmingly, his eyes shining with adoration. Anemone looks surprised, framed by delicate white flowers. Ryuka, with a bright smile, places a hand on his chest in a gesture of sincerity. Ryuka's face is illuminated by a joyful, closed-eyed smile. Anemone sits across from Ryuka, observing him with a thoughtful expression. Anemone sleeps peacefully in her bed, her blue hair fanned across the pillow. Anemone looks downcast and troubled, with a fleeting image of Ryuka's cheerful face in her thoughts. Anemone kneels in her nightclothes, eyes closed, seemingly lost in deep contemplation or prayer. A wide shot reveals a peaceful village nestled amidst lush green mountains as a thought bubble expresses profound confusion. Jean and Anemone stand with other uniformed men, all looking troubled as Anemone's thought continues, wondering what she is witnessing. Multi-panel dream sequence depicts a landscape from above, then shows Jean and Anemone in shock, followed by two men fleeing in a crumbling, rocky terrain. Jean embraces a weeping Anemone, both crying out in a scene of shared anguish. A close-up captures Anemone's wide, tear-filled eyes, reflecting her intense distress. Anemone jolts awake in her bed, sitting up with a look of extreme disorientation and upset. A close-up on Anemone's face shows her shocked expression as she questions if the terrifying event was merely a dream. Anemone remains seated in her bed, her expression visibly anxious and unsettled after the vivid dream. A thought bubble reveals Anemone cannot shake the horrifying scene of the landslide and the expressions of those engulfed by it from her mind. Anemone sits alone at a grand table, engrossed in a book, still looking deeply troubled. Anemone continues reading, lamenting that she cannot escape the disturbing dream she had yesterday. A crowd, mainly of women and young girls, marvels at a glowing, pink-maned unicorn. A serene blue-haired woman in a flowing white gown gently pets the radiant unicorn amidst delicate flowers. Anemone looks up from her book with a startled expression, wondering if her dream was prophetic. Anemone, sitting at the table with books, ponders with a worried expression if her dream means the events will truly come to pass. The vision of two men fleeing through a rocky, collapsing landscape occurs, emphasizing the dream's persistence. Jean clutches a crying Anemone tightly, both looking overwhelmed by emotion, reliving the dream's most painful moment. Anemone sits at her desk, visibly distraught, trying to convince herself that the terrifying dream was nothing more than a nightmare. Anemone, Ryuka, Cecilia, and Jean gather around a lavish tea table for a conversation. Ryuka listens attentively, holding a teacup with a serious expression. Jean smiles, taking a sip of tea, and informs the group that he may be away from court for a while to boost morale. Ryuka calmly responds, "I see," while Anemone looks distressed, connecting the mention of landslides to her unsettling dream. A close-up on Anemone's face shows her worried, slightly sweaty expression. Anemone looks up with a startled and wide-eyed expression, reacting to the ongoing discussion. Ryuka, holding a teacup, responds with a calm, "I see." Anemone, looking determined, states her desire to accompany them. Jean reassures a worried Anemone, promising to bring her back many souvenirs from his trip. Cecilia smiles radiantly and gently pats Anemone's head, surrounded by sparkling light, offering comfort. Anemone looks down, still worried, as Cecilia's hand rests gently on her head. A hand gently touches Anemone's arm, as a voice reassures her, "It'll be fine." Ryuka, with a kind smile, offers to look after Anemone, while Jean and Cecilia are busy with official matters. Ryuka smiles, thinking that a trip with Anemone sounds pleasant. From an overhead view, Jean and Cecilia sit at the table, while Ryuka stands behind Anemone, contemplating that he would feel more at ease if Jean were with Anemone. Anemone looks troubled and releases a small sigh. Ryuka gazes intently at Anemone, his expression thoughtful. A grand carriage travels through the Rodea region, a verdant land abundant with forest resources and a flowing river. John and Ryuka, along with other passengers, are seated in the carriage, with Jean stating they are on their way to the region. Anemone, looking curious, wonders why everyone isn't in their own carriage, as Jean explains that Cecilia prepared a bento for them. Anemone looks surprised and delighted as she holds a sandwich, realizing the bento is the reason for sharing a carriage. Anemone's father, Jean, and Ryuka smile warmly at Anemone as she enjoys her sandwich, surrounded by a festive atmosphere. Several grand carriages make their way through a bright, sun-dappled landscape. Uniformed men diligently clear debris and dirt from the ground, possibly from a small landslide. Jean and Anemone observe an older woman talking to them with a distressed expression, while Jean looks thoughtful. Jean smiles as he hands out bowls of food to the people, including the older woman, while Anemone watches and a young boy happily eats. An older woman and an older man smile with gratitude, holding their bowls of food. Ryuka walks closely beside Anemone through a lush, leafy landscape. Ryuka comments that the scenery would have been even more beautiful without the heavy rain. Anemone looks downcast and pensive, perhaps still affected by her dream or the current situation. Anemone looks up at the surrounding trees, her expression conveying a sense of unease. Ryuka looks at Anemone with a concerned expression as they stand together in the verdant setting. John questions Anemone's sudden decision to join their inspection, wondering if she is hiding something from him. Anemone looks downcast and troubled, not meeting Jean's gaze. Her hands nervously clutch the fabric of her dress, revealing her inner turmoil. Anemone smiles, teasing her brother Jean about being strange. Ryuka smiles brightly, waving cheerfully, appearing eager and happy. Anemone looks up at John and the blonde boy, asking if the boy is Ryuka. Ryuka beams with a radiant, closed-eyed smile amidst delicate flowers. Anemone looks pensive and slightly surprised, framed by soft white flowers. Jean looks thoughtfully at Ryuka, who smiles gently at Anemone. Jean, Anemone, and Ryuka stand together on a path as a thought bubble emerges from below. John holds Anemone closely, declaring he won't let her go and affirming he is her knight. Anemone questions Jean's ability to be a knight as the crown prince, but Jean explains it's about emotion and asks if she's dissatisfied. Ryuka smiles, indicating that the good relationship between Jean and Anemone makes it impossible for him to compete. Jean, Ryuka, and Anemone walk along a path, with Ryuka thinking he is envious. Ryuka's joyful, closed-eyed smile is highlighted, surrounded by sparkling flowers. Ryuka and Anemone stand facing each other on a sunny path, engaged in conversation. Jean expresses a nuanced thought, then everyone hears frantic shouts for help as a child has fallen into the river. Jean, Ryuka, and Anemone look up with startled, wide-eyed expressions at the sudden cries for help. Jean tells Ryuka, "Let's go," and Ryuka agrees, instructing Anemone to wait there. Jean and Ryuka run off into the foliage, leaving Anemone behind on the path. Anemone stands alone, thinking she also has her own responsibilities to take care of. Anemone sits, holding a book and a crystal orb, pondering if her dream was truly a prophecy. A close-up of Anemone's skirt and boots shows her determination, thinking she doesn't want to regret her actions later. A scenic view of mountains and a river, as Anemone's thought bubble simply says, "I." Anemone's face is resolute and determined, holding the red book tightly. Anemone walks alone on a lush, forested path, moving with purpose. Anemone shades her eyes, looking up and wondering if her destination is still quite far away. A bright sky and trees are depicted, as Anemone thinks about the place she saw in her dream. Anemone falls forward, crying out in distress as she scrapes her hand. A close-up shows Anemone's pained and scraped face, wincing after her fall. Anemone gets up from the ground, looking back at a fallen branch as she continues. Anemone's hand firmly grips a vine or plant, pulling herself forward. Anemone climbs up a rocky incline, urging herself to move quickly. Anemone continues to scramble upwards, while a lizard and a snake are visible near her feet. Anemone's hands desperately grip the edge of a rock, straining to pull herself up. Anemone gazes over a vast, green mountain landscape, exclaiming, "This scenery is..." Anemone stands at the edge of a high cliff, looking down at the immense drop below her. Anemone looks down at a village nestled in the distance, realizing she hasn't traveled far, despite feeling high. Anemone sits, then a grimoire to increase magical power and a crystal that stabilizes magic strength are displayed. Anemone closes her eyes, a determined expression on her face. Anemone holds the grimoire and crystal, reassuring herself, "You can do it." A torrent of rocks falls violently, indicated by sound effects. Anemone's eyes widen in alarm, realizing, here it comes. Anemone stands amidst a cascade of falling rocks, looking at the impending landslide. Anemone stands bravely amidst the falling rocks, holding her book and crystal. Anemone looks down at the chaotic rock slide below her. Jean and Ryuka look up, their faces filled with shock and concern. John and a struggling child are in the river as a crowd of people watches anxiously from the bank. Ryuka reaches out to help the child, with Jean also in the water beside him. John and Ryuka, having rescued the child, warmly return him to his grateful family. Jean and Ryuka stand on the forest path, wondering where Anemone has gone. Ryuka kneels, confirming to Jean that these are Anemone's footprints. John expresses his alarm, questioning why Anemone would go to such a dangerous place. John reacts with a sharp gasp, his face contorted in an alarmed expression. Ryuka looks surprised as John urgently directs a crowd, while a woman and children appear distressed. John looks utterly shocked, questioning what he is seeing in the distance. Ryuka and Jean look up in alarm as someone urgently warns them about the mountain. The mountain begins to collapse, sending debris down, and Ryuka realizes in horror that Anemone is over there. Jean starts to run urgently as Ryuka calls out his name from below. John sprints desperately towards the ominous mountain. Jean's face is filled with intense fear and determination. A serene vision of Anemone smiling appears, framed by delicate blue flowers. Anemone's scratched hands firmly grip her grimoire and the magic stabilizing crystal. Rocks crash down violently around Anemone, intensifying the danger. Anemone's determined resolve flashes, planning to use her magic to smash the landslide. Anemone closes her eyes in deep concentration, a soft glow emanating from her as she holds her magical items. A devastating landslide cascades down the mountain, causing immense destruction. Anemone winces in pain, her face showing the strain and scratches from her ordeal. A tender memory of a young Anemone being held and comforted by Jean. A heartwarming memory of Anemone as a happy child with Cecilia. A cherished memory shows a young Jean offering flowers to a youthful Anemone. Anemone thinks about the truly important people in her life. Anemone's face is etched with deep sorrow, and tears begin to fall. Anemone's tear-filled eyes show a desperate resolve amidst her distress. A uniformed officer shouts orders to report the situation, informing His Majesty that a landslide has occurred in the mountains. A man whispers an urgent question to the royalty about whether the evacuation has begun. The evacuation is confirmed to be underway, as an officer calmly instructs the people to remain calm despite the imminent threat of another landslide. An officer urgently advises His Majesty to evacuate immediately for his safety. Jean and another man observe the landslide-affected mountain from afar, amidst the falling rain. Ryuka grasps his head, visibly distressed and agitated by the situation. Jean looks panicked, reflecting that even His Highness is overcome with fear. Ryuka declares his firm intention to find Anemone and dashes into the woods. Ryuka looks startled as a burst of energy or realization appears below him. Jean's legs pound the ground as he runs through the forest with urgency. Jean's face contorts with fierce determination, pushing through his desperation. Jean yells Anemone's name, running furiously through the forest. A flashback shows Jean asking a younger Anemone if reading books ever bores her, to which she replies that it never does. Jean admits he doesn't understand Anemone's love for books, but promises his unwavering support whenever she needs him. A young Anemone confides in Jean that she feels much safer with him protecting her, making Jean smile. Jean's face shows an intense, pained resolve as he silently vows to be dependable. Anemone's white dress, adorned with delicate lace and ruffles, is shown in detail. The landslide continues with great force, rocks hurtling down the canyon. The earth shatters with a bright blue magical force. Anemone looks upwards, her face strained with a desperate, forceful effort. Anemone, enveloped in a radiant white glow, struggles against the landslide, as Jean and another woman look on in shock, and Anemone declares she cannot let it happen. Anemone stands, radiating a powerful light amidst the falling rocks, resolute in her decision. Powerful blue energy spirals intensely downwards, striking the ground with force. A complex blue magical symbol radiates immense power, filling the scene with light. Anemone's tear-filled eyes show deep pain and intense concentration. A powerful burst of light accompanies a magical command to stop. A fierce blue magical energy radiates with a powerful blast, sending debris scattering. Anemone's eyes are wide with desperate effort, her face streaked with dirt and strain from her magical exertion. Anemone closes her eyes, a silent plea to please let me protect what's important to me echoing in her mind. Anemone stands amidst glowing blue energy streaks as the ground beneath her cracks under the intense magical force. A powerful, brilliant explosion of white and blue light erupts, filling the entire scene with its force. Anemone stands injured in a rocky crevice, her red grimoire lying on the blood-splattered ground beside her. Anemone looks up at the sky between the canyon walls, wondering if the danger has finally stopped. Anemone's grimoire lies on the ground, still stained with blood, next to her weary foot. Anemone winces, clutching her chest in pain, her face still marred by dirt and intense exhaustion. Anemone gasps, her hand gripping in agony, as she struggles with a new wave of pain. Overwhelmed, Anemone collapses on the cracked ground, thinking the pressure was too much and she cannot move or even utter a sound. Ugh, ugh. Anemone lies incapacitated on the deeply cracked ground, her grimoire nearby, as the mountains loom over her. Anemone plunges through the air, her grimoire falling open below her, as she gasps, "Ah, the ground is..." Anemone's face shows deep distress as she realizes she can no longer use her magic. Anemone reflects on the cruel irony of falling off a cliff again, contemplating that this must be her destiny. Anemone closes her eyes with a mournful expression, wishing she had lived just a little bit longer. Anemone falls helplessly through the air, realizing she can neither move her body nor use magic. Anemone's face is mournful, her eyes closed, as she repeats her wish to have lived just a little longer. A sinister gray-haired man laughs triumphantly over an unconscious pink-haired woman lying helpless on a table. A young pink-haired girl with purple eyes offers a sly, mischievous smile. Cecilia tenderly cradles and kisses baby Anemone's head, surrounded by soft, warm light. Young Jean affectionately embraces a smiling young Anemone, both radiating happiness. Jean's face is a mask of wide-eyed panic and desperate fear. Jean clings to the cliff edge, desperately holding Anemone's hand as she dangles far below him. Anemone lies unconscious and injured as Jean pleads for her to open her eyes. Jean's face is etched with desperate urgency as he pleads with Anemone to "Take my hand, I beg you, please." Anemone's pale face looks distant as Jean frantically calls her name, urging her to grab my hand. Anemone's profile reveals her pale, injured face, a vacant expression in her eyes. Jean looks exhausted, but manages a determined, almost relieved, faint smile. Jean embraces Anemone, his hand gently resting on her back in a comforting gesture. Jean and Anemone sit together on the cliff edge, embracing, and Anemone thinks, "I'm allowed to live." Jean and Anemone stand side by side in a grand room, both looking utterly surprised. Jean stands by a bed, looking at Anemone and a smaller Anemone, feeling immense relief and thinking, "Thank goodness, thank goodness." Jean clasps his hands together in a gesture of profound emotion, framed by delicate pink flowers. Jean, in a thought bubble, proudly declares he used his power to summon the most skilled doctors and mages in Rodea. A crowd of people, including a man and woman, pray with closed eyes, hands clasped. Jean and Ryuka sit quietly on a sofa, looking contemplative, surrounded by sparkling flowers. An older, smiling Anemone stands beside a younger Anemone, framed by elegant white flowers. Jean sits peacefully, reading on a cliff's edge as Ryuka approaches him from below. Jean, Cecilia, Ryoka, and Anemone stand on a lush forest path, with another man in formal attire. Cecilia gently touches Anemone's shoulder, while Ryuka looks on, surrounded by flowers. Anemone, in a pink dress, looks directly forward as Ryuka and another character are partially visible beside her. Young Anemone, in her pink dress, stands between two adult figures, looking up with anticipation. A beautiful garden fountain is surrounded by lush greenery and vibrant pink roses. Cecilia's elegant profile is adorned with delicate earrings and a choker necklace, surrounded by soft light. Cecilia stands gracefully in a beautiful garden, a small green bird perched gently on her hand. Cecilia's father, a kind-looking gray-haired man with a mustache, smiles, calling out the name Katya. Cecilia's father informs her that Crown Prince Vernon will soon pick her up, as it's time to return to the estate. Cecilia looks thoughtful in profile, acknowledging her father with a simple yes. Cecilia, with a drop of blood on her finger amidst dark roses, smiles cunningly, thinking, "That's right. A flower that's only beautiful is boring, isn't it?" Cecilia smiles slyly, covering her mouth with one hand while dressed in a beautiful purple gown. Cecilia places a finger to her lips, thinking she is terribly bored. Cecilia looks with wide eyes at her finger, which has a small spot of blood on it. Cecilia's cunning smile appears as she reflects that a flower that is only beautiful is quite boring. Cecilia, with a finger to her lips, contemplates her profound boredom amidst a backdrop of dark roses. Cecilia stands in a lush rose garden, looking away, while Cecilia's father observes her thoughtfully from the foreground. Cecilia, in a different pink dress, smiles gracefully at an admiring crowd, beaming with public charm. Cecilia's father stands solemnly at a gravesite adorned with roses, thinking that all this is thanks to Camille's death, surrounded by mourners. Cecilia's father reflects that everything is progressing smoothly, yet a deep uneasiness causes him to clench his hand. A serene image of a baby anemone appears, causing Cecilia's father to gasp in shock as he clutches his chest, wondering why he feels so uneasy. Cecilia's father stands, visibly distressed and clutching his chest, feeling the weight of his hidden worries. In the garden, Cecilia's father dismisses his unease, and then asks Cecilia if she wasn't sad on the day Camille died. Cecilia looks thoughtful and serene, standing amidst delicate purple flowers. Cecilia's father looks distressed, starting to confess something about the accident, revealing a truth. Cecilia looks directly forward with a sinister, cunning smile, her finger pressed to her lips, surrounded by dark, ominous roses. Cecilia's father looks wide-eyed and startled, a look of fear on his face. Cecilia calmly tells her father that his loud voice scared the birds away, deflecting his earlier question. Cecilia's father tries to respond, stammering in the face of Cecilia's composed demeanor. Cecilia casually asks her father if he doesn't think dwelling on the past is pointless, continuing to manipulate the conversation. Cecilia closes her eyes, smiling brightly and innocently, seemingly pleased with her control of the situation. Cecilia's father takes her hand, suggesting they leave so they don't keep the crown prince waiting. Cecilia's father looks distressed, thinking that beyond her beauty, this child Cecilia truly terrifies him. Cecilia smiles brightly and happily, taking her father's hand as she skips through the sunny garden. Cecilia smiles cunningly, thinking to herself that it's about time she found a new toy. Anemone, with long blue hair, stands observing a gray-haired man and a blonde boy sitting on an ornate sofa in a grand room. Anemone stands, extending her hand as a large, intricate blue magical pattern radiates from her. Anemone touches her forehead, surprised that she possessed such power. Anemone sits peacefully on a large, soft yellow bed, looking calm and composed. Anemone sleeps soundly in bed, illuminated by a gentle, sparkling light. A sequence shows a glowing crystal, a dark, blurry void, and Anemone's wide, curious eyes, indicating a significant awakening or observation. A glowing crystal reacts powerfully as a gray-haired man and a man with spectacles observe Anemone, who radiates light, both marveling at the wonderful reaction and the crystal's strong, deep glow. The gray-haired man states that Lady Anemone's talent might rival the founding Saint Lycal, while the man with spectacles looks on. The gray-haired man stands proudly with Anemone, declaring she has amazing power, then smiles subtly to himself. A hand gently pats Anemone's head as she looks down, appearing thoughtful or overwhelmed by the attention. The gray-haired man suggests that widely publicizing Anemone's power would raise the nation's prestige, then asks Anemone what she desires to do. Anemone closes her eyes, and the gray-haired man declares that they will honor her wishes by making this a top-level state secret. The gray-haired man sternly warns that anyone who speaks of this secret will lose their life, to which the man with spectacles readily agrees. The gray-haired man looks gently at Anemone, who gazes back at him. The blonde boy looks up, wide-eyed and surprised. A white floral pattern transitions the scene, signaling a moment of pause or reflection. Anemone extends her hand towards the blonde boy, inviting him. Anemone looks surprised, her expression filled with concern. Anemone and the blonde boy hold hands, looking into each other's eyes amid sparkling light. Anemone stands between the gray-haired man and the blonde boy, who are seated on the sofa. The gray-haired man sits on the sofa with his arms crossed, appearing thoughtful and stern. Anemone and the blonde boy hold hands, surrounded by blooming blue flowers. The gray-haired man smiles gently, illuminated by a soft, warm light. Three masked, cloaked figures stand on a castle wall, one holding an axe and another a sword, creating a tense atmosphere. A grand, imposing castle is shown, with many soldiers arrayed below its walls, prepared for defense or battle. Anemone's face is shown in a close-up, wearing a white hooded cloak, her eyes conveying serious determination despite slight facial scratches. A masked figure lunges with a dagger, while a purple glowing staff adorned with a skull radiates sinister energy. Several masked figures cry out in pain as they are enveloped by powerful purple energy, while a soldier struggles, affected by the magic. Anemone focuses intently, channeling powerful light magic as intricate glowing symbols swirl around her. Anemone's blue dress is surrounded by flowing, intricate blue magical patterns as her immense power surges. A soldier asks Anemone if she is all right, to which Anemone affirms she is, and the soldier recognizes her as Lady Anemone, the Holy Lady of Lycal. Anemone raises her hands towards the grand castle, manifesting a massive, star-shaped magical barrier of brilliant blue light over it. A masked figure exclaims, "Whoa!" as the purple staff is yanked from their grasp, while another masked figure watches, and a third is lifted and spun by a turquoise magical current, protesting that their body is moving on its own. The soldier looks amazed, thinking, amazing, as Anemone's blue magic lifts multiple masked figures into the air around the castle walls. A man in formal attire urgently informs Anemone that the masterminds have fled through the back exit. Anemone smiles subtly, confirming that Ryuka is over there, implying she will handle the escapees. From a low perspective, a knight's legs stand in the foreground as 4 masked figures quickly disappear into a dark, stone archway, making their escape. Jean stands firm, holding his sword with a determined and serious expression, ready for action. A masked figure exclaims in frustration as they are pinned down by a purple magical circle, a shadowy vortex pulling them. Jean prepares to strike, his sword glinting, as purple magical energy emanates from the masked figure he confronts. Jean holds his sword to the throat of a masked figure, who groans, as another masked figure lies defeated beside them. A masked figure screams eek, their face contorted in fear, as Jean's sword blade is held menacingly close, cracking the stone wall behind them. Jean stands over a defeated masked figure, his sword point hovering, as the masked figure cries out eek. Jean's attire is adorned with intricate golden and silver chains, symbolizing his high status. Jean looks determined, with a small cut on his face, showing the intensity of the recent battle. Anemone looks surprised and concerned, a small cut visible on her cheek, reflecting the danger she faced. Jean stands before Anemone on a stone path, hands on his hips, questioning her presence on the battlefield, while Anemone responds hesitantly. A soldier scolds Anemone for participating, reminding her to leave fieldwork to them, but a chibi Anemone expresses worry for everyone, and a chibi Jean questions what if Lady Anemone were to get hurt. Jean gently touches Anemone's cheek, looking intently at her small cut with deep concern. Jean turns to Anemone, who smiles at him, and he expresses his thanks. Anemone beams, surrounded by beautiful white flowers, her slight facial cut highlighting her recent efforts. Anemone looks at Jean, who sighs deeply, her expression questioning his weariness. Jean looks away, his expression serious and thoughtful. Anemone looks directly forward with a soft, slightly wistful expression. Jean gestures towards Anemone, explaining his concern while she stands humbly before him. A lavish green carriage, pulled by 2 horses, travels along a serene forest path. Anemone sits gracefully inside the carriage, looking serene and composed as she travels. A narration states that 10 years have passed since the Rodea incident, and the speaker has dedicated their time to studying magic. The speaker, an older Anemone, narrates her personal interest in magic and her current role overseeing magical artifacts in the kingdom. Jean sits in the carriage opposite Anemone, looking thoughtful as Anemone looks down, reflecting on their conversation. An older, gray-haired nobleman stands with a younger Jean, looking at a thread of red beads, while Anemone narrates that Jean, once slender, has grown strong and capable. Jean smiles shyly and slightly embarrassed, a faint blush on his cheeks. Jean asks Anemone about her earlier comment, and Anemone replies that no knights scold their lord like that, wondering if he was angry. Anemone, smiling sweetly with closed eyes, replies that she would not be angry, adding that it is only natural for Ryuka to be angry. Anemone continues to smile, stating that she does not mind being scolded by Ryuka. Jean, seen from above, asks Anemone if she will be attending the upcoming ball, and Anemone replies yes. A chibi Anemone with pleading hands asks Anemone please, revealing that her mother begged her to attend, so she has to go. I'm 16. Ryuka is 20. Anemone looks down, eyes closed, with a pensive expression, adorned with delicate jewelry. The carriage horses gallop quickly, their hooves thudding as they rush forward. Jean looks surprised and concerned, holding Anemone closer, asking, "What's wrong?" The carriage driver, from his seat, begins to explain the situation, stating, "It's just that a small girl with light brown hair and a pink dress stands on the path, holding a bouquet of blue flowers, looking up sadly. The little girl looks surprised, explaining that she wanted to give Anemone these flowers. Jean steps out of the carriage, thinking this is a bit troublesome, but he apologizes and offers to hand the flowers over to the little girl. Jean gently reaches out to the little girl, who holds out the blue bouquet, connecting in the forest. Anemone stands elegantly by the carriage, radiating light and grace in her attire. Jean takes the blue flowers from the little girl, thanking her for the beautiful bouquet intended for Anemone. The little girl looks up happily, thinking if she will be able to learn magic and be like Anemone someday. Anemone gently pats the little girl's head, smiling warmly as the girl gazes up with a blush. Anemone, with her eyes closed and a soft smile, subtly moves her hand. Anemone smiles brightly, looking down at the little girl, who smiles back up at her. Anemone, holding the blue flowers, tells the little girl that bad kids get black collars. Anemone looks up with wide, concerned eyes, questioning, a black collar? As mysterious particles float around her. Anemone tells the little girl that bad kids get black collars, Then a dark, glowing black collar appears in a void, shocking Anemone. The scene transitions, showing a peaceful village and soldiers, as one states that things have been getting dangerous lately, and another agrees, adding, "and this too." Two soldiers discuss a rumored item, realizing its potential danger, and that they need to report it to Lady Anemone. Anemone, Jean, and other researchers observe the mysterious black collar and glowing crystals on a table in a grand library. Anemone looks serious, reflecting on reports of damage and the terrifying magical tool that can control minds, even of magical beasts. A researcher with glasses suggests trying an analysis spell on the collar. Two researchers exclaim that the analysis spell was deflected, indicating a strong protective spell that might take 3 days to dispel. Anemone, wearing glasses and radiating light, casts a spell on the black collar, which floats suspended before her. The two researchers react with wide-eyed surprise and shock as Anemone takes action. Anemone explains that the choker part of the collar contains a locking spell, likely to prevent the wearer from removing it. Anemone describes the collar's magic as a type she's never seen, designed to activate using a living creature's magic as a medium to control magical beasts, to which the male researcher questions her meaning. Anemone further explains it's a parasitic spell that activates using the magic of the creature it's attached to, while the male researcher muses about this mysterious magic. A pink-haired woman, elegantly dressed, looks thoughtful and distressed, wondering what kind of person would seek such an item. The gray-haired man praises Anemone for her excellent analysis, with Jean and another researcher standing by. Anemone, wearing glasses, adjusts them with a thoughtful expression. Jean asks if black gemstones are rare, and Anemone replies that this is black spinel, which is especially rare. Anemone continues to explain that black spinel is especially rare, and only mined and polished in a few places in this country. Anemone suggests examining the mines and polishing workshops, to which the other researchers agree. Anemone expresses her desire to go, but Jean intervenes, firmly telling her she must stay. A close-up of Jean's hand in golden uniform, adorned with white flowers, emphasizes his steadfast presence. Two rustic wooden cabins stand amidst a dense forest, signaling a change of setting to a remote area. A carriage moves through a dark forest as three cloaked figures discuss an unusual change in ownership, with one reassuring that preparations are complete. The red-haired man, with a cunning smile, confirms that plenty has been prepared for their satisfaction, implying sinister intentions. Two cloaked figures cautiously enter a dark, mysterious area, with leaves swirling around them. A group of 4 knights in white cloaks stands guard in the forest, alert. A group of knights confronts a surprised man in the dark forest. The red-haired man glares fiercely, clutching a bag, and exclaims, "You bastard." Jean holds his sword to the red-haired man's throat, declaring himself Luca Fogabella of the Royal Knights. Jean holds his sword firmly to the red-haired man's throat, maintaining a serious expression amidst a sparkling background. The red-haired man surrenders with raised hands as Jean and other knights apprehend the cloaked figures, while an aerial view shows the activity around the wooden cabins. A hooded figure with a scar subtly pulls down his cloak, revealing a menacing smirk. A gloved hand retrieves the mysterious black collar, as a full moon shines brightly in a purple, starry night sky. Anemone stands nervously in a light blue off-shoulder dress, flanked by 2 cheerful maids preparing her for the ball. The 2 maids joyfully announce they will prepare the finest dress for Lady Anemone. Chibi Anemone looks surprised and overwhelmed, while the 2 maids eagerly declare they will handle everything. One maid excitedly states they've been waiting for this day for so long, looking at Anemone. Anemone looks anxious and a little stressed, with a bead of sweat on her temple, dressed in her ball gown. Anemone stands uncomfortably in her elegant blue dress, as the 2 maids fuss over her, still beaming with excitement. The maids, holding a pink dress, reiterate their determination to prepare the finest dress for Lady Anemone. A grand ballroom, filled with elegantly dressed guests, is seen in a wide shot, bustling with activity. Couples dance gracefully in the grand ballroom, with musical notes floating around, capturing the festive atmosphere. Anemone stands elegantly in her light blue ball gown, adorned with delicate jewelry, against a sparkling pink floral background. Anemone's parents stand conversing in the grand ballroom, while Anemone herself is partially seen behind a patterned screen. Anemone looks to the side, calling out, "Father, Mother." "Oh, Anemone." Against a backdrop of golden flowers, Anemone's mother leans in close to Anemone's father, who looks startled, as she reminds him they are in public. Anemone smiles serenely, reflecting that her father is always affectionate. Anemone is surrounded by noble women at the ball, with one elegantly dressed woman praising Anemone's exemplary work as a supervisor and her remarkable talent for magic. The noblewomen press Anemone with invitations to their estates and territories, making Anemone feel overwhelmed. However, a gray-haired man steps in to apologize and kindly asks the women not to trouble Anemone too much. Anemone looks surprised and slightly flustered, while an unseen speaker reassures her, "You're fine now." Anemone, relax and enjoy the ball. It's been a while since you've attended. Anemone smiles brightly, holding the skirt of her gown as she moves gracefully. Anemone walks away, her back to the viewer, through the lavish hall. Anemone's parents smile warmly, commenting that she has grown up so much. A group of noblewomen at the ball whisper and gossip amongst themselves, fanning their faces. Prince Jean appears, looking majestic in his uniform, causing several women to exclaim in admiration. Several noblewomen approach Jean, greeting him and asking if he would care to dance. However, Jean declines, stating he is not very good at dancing. Jean stands surrounded by the fawning noblewomen in the opulent ballroom. Jean reaches out to a noblewoman who appears faint, touching her arm with concern. Jean leans in, asking the noblewoman if she is all right. Jean supports the noblewoman, recalling her name as Miss Restard and mentioning her preparations for the festival. Miss Retard is surprised that Jean knows her name, and he explains that he makes it a point to remember the names of his loyal subjects, smiling gently. Miss Restard is deeply honored, while Jean notices her red face and advises her to rest. Jean thanks the people around him and indicates for Miss Restard to be escorted away by 2 royal guards. Jean walks away with a confident stride, while the other noblewomen observe him, murmuring. Jean smiles, calling out, "Anemone." Anemone smiles back, radiating elegance in her light blue dress amidst a floral background. Jean asks Anemone if she has finished greeting her father and the others, to which she replies yes, explaining she is taking her time since it's been a while since her last ball. Jean offers to escort Anemone, looking at her intently. Anemone questions if Jean is worried about leaving the other people alone, as a group of excited noblewomen watch them in the background. Jean dismisses Anemone's concern for the noblewomen, saying, "They're fine," and then asks if she is sure she isn't overexerting herself. Jean gently touches Anemone's forehead, checking on her. Anemone replies not quite yet to Jean's offer to escort her, saying she can handle the greetings, but then in a chibi panel, Jean expresses concern she is being overprotective, while Anemone closes her eyes with a smile. Jean smiles broadly, radiating warmth and happiness. Anemone and Jean watch 2 musicians playing violins in the grand ballroom. Anemone stands alone in a beautiful royal garden under a full moon, a serene night scene. Ryuka appears, calling out Lady Anemone, finding her in the garden. Anemone acknowledges him, and Ryuka says he's been looking for her. Ryuka asks Anemone if it's all right for him to be in the garden, and Anemone replies, "Not exactly." Several noblewomen in the ballroom exclaim, "Sir Ryuka," and wonder where he has gone, searching for him. Ryuka smiles contentedly, stating he is happier being by Anemone's side. Anemone narrates that Ryuka has served her ever since the Rodea disaster 10 years ago. Anemone tells Ryuka he doesn't have to be so loyal. Ryuka looks thoughtful, glancing to the side. Anemone asks Ryuka why he is laughing as he chuckles softly. Ryuka apologizes, explaining that Anemone is just that kind of person, with a focus on his feet on the path. Ryuka gently touches Anemone's hair, looking at her with a soft expression. Ryuka and Anemone share a close, intimate look, surrounded by blue flowers. The scene shifts to the Anfnis Kingdom's royal capital, showing a magnificent, purple-roofed castle under a sparkling sky. Horses trot, and rose petals fall from the sky as a wedding procession featuring a different couple, a pink-haired woman and a blonde man, is shown. Crowds cheer for the crown princess and Lady Kitsuya, celebrating the wedding procession. Lady Kitsuya smiles radiantly with closed eyes, raising a gloved hand during her celebration. A joyful crowd of commoners cheers enthusiastically, celebrating the wedding procession. Lady Kitsuya exchanges an apple with the blonde man in a royal uniform, while an unseen speaker comments on her good terms with the crown prince and predicts the country's happiness when she becomes queen. People lean from rustic windows, waving and cheering excitedly as the procession passes. A man in a rustic setting joyfully shouts Lady Kitsuya as he reaches for a tossed bouquet of flowers. A close-up reveals the vibrant bouquet of yellow, orange, and white flowers now caught. Lady Kitsuya gracefully throws a bouquet, smiling amidst falling petals during the celebration. Lady Kitsuya beams with delight, a gloved hand raised to her mouth, surrounded by the festive floral bouquet. The scene transitions to a magnificent purple-roofed castle under a dark, full moonlit sky, adorned with many towers. Lady Kitsuya holds the mysterious black collar, thinking it's a magic tool to control monsters. while the male researcher confirms its usefulness for the crown prince or king. The male researcher expresses his inability to return to Lycal after defecting to Amphnis and asks for a guarantee of safety for his family, as Lady Cattleya subtly smirks. Lady Katia, with a broad smile, assures the male researcher that she will guarantee his family's well-being, to his evident relief. Lady Cattleya holds the black collar, thinking, however, and deems its use for monster control unsatisfactory. The male researcher questions unsatisfactory as Lady Cattleya, with a sinister smile and glowing eyes, suggests it would be more interesting to use the magic tool to control humans. The male researcher, shocked, questions, control humans, and asks what she would do with such a device. Lady Cattleya smiles broadly, gesturing with a small remote control-like device, hinting at her sinister plans for human control. The male researcher cries out in shock and fear, turning his head sharply at an unseen event. A terrified woman, Sasha, and a young boy, Al, are held at sword point by two stern guards. The male researcher looks horrified and desperately cries out the names of his family. Sasha! Al! A stern-looking guard stands, as an unseen speaker explains that these elite guards have served the Oxalis family for generations. A gloved hand grips a sword, and the speaker declares that the guards obey any command given to them, implying Lady Cattleya's control. Lady Cattleya, with a cunning, sinister smile and glowing purple eyes, menacingly holds the black collar. Lady Cattleya forcefully places the black collar around the male researcher's neck, who looks utterly terrified. The male researcher's face is filled with terror as the black collar encircles his neck, and Lady Cattleya, out of frame, chillingly says, now then. Lady Cattleya, with glowing purple eyes and a wide, sinister smile, asks the male researcher if he will be able to follow her orders. A magnificent castle, adorned with light blue roofs, shines brightly under a sparkling sky, signifying a change of scene. The blonde man stands in an opulent, sunlit room, reading a letter with a serious expression. The blonde man slams his hand on the desk in a fit of rage, scattering a quill and ink bottle, shouting about inferior frontier people. Lady Cattleya peeks from behind a door, smiling eerily with glowing purple eyes, observing the blonde man's furious reaction. Lady Cattleya enters the room, and the startled blonde man greets her, questioning if she wasn't meeting a Lycal defector. Lady Cattleya embraces the blonde man, leaning into his chest with a warm smile, seemingly offering comfort amidst a bed of flowers. A close-up of Lady Cattleya's surprised expression. The blonde man explains to Lady Cattleya that the letter is a denunciation from the Crown Prince of Lycal, and Lady Cattleya adds that it insolently challenges their country's slave system. The blonde man, radiating red energy in his anger, declares that slaves are an important asset in Amphnis, while Lady Cattleya expresses subtle surprise. The blonde man, enraged, crushes an apple and curses, "Damn you, Jean Lycal Gentiana," questioning what a magic-skilled country like Lycal could possibly understand. Lady Cattleya gently touches the blonde man's distressed face, offering a moment of solace. Lady Cattleya embraces the blonde man closely, looking at him with an intense expression amidst blooming pink flowers. Lady Cattleya asks the blonde man if he wants to retaliate against Lycal, to which he firmly replies, yes. Lady Cattleya smiles with a sinister, wide grin and glowing purple eyes, revealing her malicious intent to retaliate against Lycal. A new castle, distinct with red roofs and white walls under a bright blue sky, establishes a new setting. A cheerful maid in a white apron holds several wrapped gifts and smiles brightly. Anemone looks surprised at a large pile of gifts, asking the two maids, "What? Why is there so much?" The cheerful maid smiles and explains that the gifts and letters are all addressed to Lady Anemone. Another maid smiles while holding a rabbit plushie and an envelope, stating that a variety of items have been delivered. Anemone looks down thoughtfully, holding a letter, her green eyes reflecting a gentle light. The two maids smile, holding various letters, and explain that all the correspondence expresses gratitude towards Lady Anemone. Anemone, surrounded by blooming flowers, holds a letter thoughtfully, musing that one is even from an orphan. Anemone smiles serenely, holding a letter close to her heart, her green eyes filled with warmth and contentment. A grand light blue castle stands under a full moon and starry night sky, framed by delicate lace-like borders. Anemone lies asleep in a lavish canopy bed, appearing to dream or contemplate deeply. Anemone appears distressed with closed eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. Jean stands alone in a richly decorated royal hall, facing away from the viewer, looking somber. Jean's feet are shown standing still, hinting at a moment of pause or hesitation. Jean walks towards a grand, sunlit window in the opulent hall. Jean is seen on a balcony, as a distressed Anemone cries out, "No!" "Stop, brother." And no, in despair. Jean falls from the balcony, a hand reaching out in a desperate, unsuccessful attempt to grasp him. Jean plunges downwards from the high balcony, as a dark figure watches from a lower vantage point. Jean falls, his back visible, with a mysterious, glowing black collar around his neck, emanating purple energy. Jean's face contorts in despair as the glowing black collar encircles his neck, a look of profound sorrow on him. The dark figure stands on the balcony, looking down into the abyss where Jean fell. A blood-splattered hand, likely Jean's, falls downwards, symbolizing a tragic end. Anemone's cries of, "No, no, brother!" echo in desperate speech bubbles against a dark background, emphasizing her terror. Anemone jolts awake in her bed, gasping in shock, then covers her mouth in horror, her dream vivid. Anemone sits up, pondering if her intense dream was a prophetic vision and why it recurred. Anemone resolves with determination, thinking, "No, I won't let him die," and vows to change the future again. A serene night sky, with a crescent moon and scattered stars, serves as a transition. Anemone is seen diligently researching at a desk, covered with numerous books in a lavish room. Anemone's hands hold an open book as she thinks about finding a way to avoid the approaching fate of death. Anemone recalls Jean wearing a black collar in her dream, pondering if a confiscated collar, meant to be secured, had escaped vigilance. Anemone contemplates the dream's intricate building architecture and clothing details, trying to piece together its meaning. Anemone's eyes widen with a sudden, shocked realization. Anemone looks determined, her gaze resolute amidst blooming flowers. 3 maids are meticulously cleaning a grand hall. A maid comments that she hasn't seen Anemone recently. 2 maids discuss Anemone's research, believing she's working through the night without rest. The 3 maids express concern for Anemone's well-being in the spacious hall. A split view displays a majestic castle under a starry sky and Anemone's study area, highlighting her continued solitary work. Ryuka enters with a tray of tea and cake, smiling, and Anemone acknowledges him. Ryuka presents the tray to Anemone, who remains engrossed in her books at the table. Anemone, looking weary, politely tells Ryuka she is not in the mood for rest. Ryuka asks if the black collar, visible on the desk, is the cause of her current distress. Ryuka reassures Anemone that the collar's manufacturers were arrested, but Anemone expresses a lingering bad feeling. Ryuka, standing on a dark, ominous balcony, senses an evil presence lurking and believes something is stirring in unknown places. Ryuka declares his resolve to protect his family, as a group of nobles, including Jean and Anemone, are shown before a grand castle. Anemone thanks Ryuka for the food but asks him to set it aside, stating she needs to investigate further. Ryuka insists on staying to help Anemone with her research, unwilling to leave her in such a state. Anemone smiles brightly, expressing her gratitude to Ryuka. A peaceful night sky with a full moon and distant stars provides a gentle transition. Jean stands conversing with a royal guard, holding a red envelope at a grand doorway. Jean questions the contents of the envelope, and the royal guard reveals it's a joint invitation from the crown prince and princess of Anfnis. Jean recalls sending a protest against Anfnis's slave system, expressing his surprise at receiving an invitation. Jean concludes that the invitation is a public display, intended to show Anfnis's peaceful intentions with other nations. The royal guard affirms Jean's assessment with a nod. Jean stands in the lavish doorway, holding the red invitation, sensing an underlying threat. Jean thinks to himself that he senses a sinister presence. Jean holds the red invitation with a serious expression, surrounded by delicate white and pink flowers. Jean, with a determined look, announces his decision to accept Anfnis's invitation. A royal carriage is prepared outside a magnificent, light blue castle for travel. Jean looks surprised and questions what this new development could possibly be. This image displays a promotional banner. Jean and Anemone stand formally, ready for their journey or arrival, surrounded by blossoming green foliage. A younger Anemone and a younger Ryuka both defiantly refuse an unseen proposition. A younger Jean calls out Ryuka's name, as Ryuka insists that if Jean wants to stop her, he should do it himself. A younger Jean smiles radiantly, surrounded by soft, glowing light, as he expresses his delight. A younger Jean stands by a carriage with a younger Anemone, informing them that he has already received his father's approval. Ryuka warns of the dangers of Anfnis, describing it as a country supporting slavery with disturbing rumors, and concludes it is not safe. A younger Anemone looks up in shock and distress, reacting to Ryuka's unsettling revelations. A younger Anemone, with a determined expression, promises Ryuka she will not be a burden, as he looks on with concern. A younger Anemone looks resolute and earnest, bathed in light, seemingly pleading or making a strong resolve. A younger Anemone looks up at Ryuka, making a heartfelt plea. Ryuka opens the carriage door as a younger Jean and a younger Anemone stand beside it, preparing to embark. Inside the carriage, Jean explains that Anfnis faces not only a slavery issue, but also a growing poverty problem, leading to widespread riots. Anemone's eyes reflect concern and thoughtfulness as she listens to the grim news about Anfnis. Anemone reflects that thinking about Anfnis brings back unpleasant memories, but she has no time to dwell on the past. Anemone looks determined, stating that if it is to save her brother, she can endure the hardships. A charming house stands under a night sky, with a carriage waiting outside, suggesting a brief stop on their journey. Anemone lies awake in bed, looking troubled and deep in thought. Anemone thinks to herself that she wishes to experience that prophetic dream one more time, seeking further insight. A younger Lady Cattleya, in a distressing flashback, kneels and cries, pleading for something to stop in a dark, oppressive environment. A close-up of a younger Lady Cattleya's tear-streaked face emphasizes her desperate plea for it to stop. In a disturbing flashback, a man in a brown coat raises a stick over a cowering maid, while a younger Lady Cattleya watches in the foreground. A younger Lady Cattleya, with sinister, glowing purple eyes and a smile, embraces a younger Anemone from behind, telling her not to look away. A younger Lady Cattleya explains that the maid stole her ring and deserves punishment, while a younger Anemone thinks it's a lie, remembering the maid's kindness. A younger Lady Cattleya smiles eerily, asking what she did wrong, then tells a younger Anemone that she is not allowed to be close to anyone but her. A younger Lady Cattleya's glowing purple eye is visible as she menacingly asks a younger Anemone if she understands. A younger Anemone cries, confirming she understands and pleading for Lady Cattleya to stop being cruel to others. A younger Anemone forces a pained smile, her eyes closed, surrounded by ethereal flowers, conveying her inner turmoil. Lady Cattleya with glowing purple eyes appears, and her father asks if she thinks that is enough, as the maid remains on the floor. Lady Cattleya gently touches a younger Anemone's head, remarking that it's good her sister is obedient. The younger Lady Cattleya kneels and cries, saying she wants someone to support her, while the maid and a younger Anemone lie still on the cold floor. A younger Anemone cries, filled with regret and apologies, believing that if she hadn't wished for anything, this wouldn't have happened. Anemone jolts awake from the nightmare, gasping, realizing she dreamed of those painful times again and that her thoughts about her brother's death are pulling her into these nightmares. Anemone closes her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek, still deeply affected by the vivid nightmare. Ryuka steps out of a room into a grand hallway. Perhaps having heard something, Ryuka stands at a doorway, asking Anemone if she is alright, having heard a noise. Anemone smiles weakly, claiming she had trouble sleeping from excitement for her trip, but internally admits to overdoing it and feeling sick. Ryuka gently touches Anemone's hand, surrounded by a soft glow, offering comfort and reassurance. Ryuka explains that he is not very skilled with magic, and this comforting touch is all he can do for her. Anemone closes her eyes, reflecting that Ryuka's gentle magic reminds her of the past and feels nostalgic. Anemone asks Ryuka if he would stay with her for a little while, and Ryuka readily agrees to stay by her side as long as she needs. Anemone rests peacefully, eyes closed, surrounded by light and flowers, finding solace in Ryuka's words, not to worry. A bustling town square under a cloudy sky, indicating their journey through a populated area. A carriage travels through the town square, as Anemone peers out from inside, pulling back a curtain. Anemone looks out with a somber expression, realizing she has finally returned to the country that caused her previous demise. A magnificent castle with prominent purple roofs stands grandly under a bright blue sky, signifying their arrival in Anfnis. Jean and Anemone stand side by side in elegant attire, surrounded by white roses, at their official arrival. Jean looks to the side with a confident and composed expression, ready for their engagement in Anfnis. Anemone looks up with a gentle smile, expressing her gratitude. Anemone observes the Anfnis castle, narrating her awareness of the upcoming audience with the Crown Prince and Cattleya's ascent to Crown Princess. Jean looks at Anemone, who thoughtfully touches her chin as they discuss their plans or current observations. Anemone firmly resolves not to abandon her brother to his fate and to stop running from her past. Anemone, Jean, and Ryuka walk down a splendid, long hallway, with a voice announcing their arrival. Magnificent, sparkling golden doors signify the entry to their destination. Venom des Anfnis, the Crown Prince of Anfnis, sits on his elaborate throne with a stern expression. Venom d'Anflis looks directly forward, declaring his name. Venom, Dan Fentis, and Lady Cattleya welcome Anemone and Jean, who are bowing before them on the grand red carpet. Venom des Anfnis, from his throne, instructs Jean and Anemone to raise their heads. Jean stands respectfully in the opulent hall after being addressed. Anemone looks down, reflecting that Lady Cattleya, that child, now stands before her. A flashback shows a younger Lady Catalia gleefully smiling next to a distressed, kneeling younger Anemone. Anemone's hands tremble slightly, betraying her inner turmoil. Anemone maintains a strained and pensive expression. Lady Cattleya sits gracefully on her throne, smiling serenely. A close-up of Lady Cattleya's gentle, confident smile, surrounded by soft flowers. Anemone formally introduces herself, maintaining a respectful posture. Lady Cattleya welcomes Lady Anemone to Anfnis with a gracious side glance. Anemone and Jean listen intently as Lady Cattleya speaks to them from her throne. Venomed Enchantress remarks that while Anemone is beautiful, Lady Cattleya is even more stunning. Venom Anfnis tells Jean he wants him to thoroughly understand Anfnis, including the excellence of slave labor, to clear up any misunderstandings from his letter. Jean agrees, expressing his desire to understand the country's reality without any misunderstandings. Venom and Anis chuckles, complimenting Jean on his eloquence. Jean replies that he is not as eloquent as His Highness, causing Venom Anfnis to visibly clench his jaw, a tisk sound. Lady Cattleya smiles, declaring Anfnis a truly wonderful country. Lady Cattleya smiles broadly, surrounded by delicate flowers. Jean promises Lady Cattleya he will do his best. Jean turns towards Anemone, who looks thoughtful, a picori sound. Anemone looks down, appearing deep in thought or discomfort, a pecori sound. Anemone's eyes betray a flicker of distress, a subtle hook sound. Anemone stands elegantly, her expression guarded. Lady Cattleya smiles and apologizes for calling out to them. Lady Katia, with glowing purple eyes, thinks she should hurry a bit, a tisk sound as a guard is seen in an upper panel. A vibrant town square bustles under the warm glow of the setting sun, revealing a horse-drawn carriage and passers-by. A blonde-haired man and a hooded man walk through the town, a cat sound as they proceed. Anemone looks up, with an expression of surprise and dawning hope. The hooded man informs Ryuka that they have identified the whereabouts of the researcher in question. Ryuka, resolute, vows to fulfill the mission entrusted to him by Lady Anemone. Ryuka instructs the hooded man to lead the way, and the man agrees, walking ahead. Ryuka stands before a table, confronting the pink-haired woman in a veil and two hooded guards, with a black collar on the table. The researcher, a man with tied-back hair, explains that per Lady Cattleya's order, he re-engineered the magic device to make anyone obey. Lady Cattleya, veiled, asks if the device even works with the command, like offer your life. The researcher confirms they would obey gladly, and Lady Cattleya praises the collar as wonderfully made. Lady Cattleya thanks the researcher, stating she will make good use of it. The researcher then asks about his freedom, and she affirms she will set him free. A hooded figure brutally stabs the researcher from behind, causing blood to splatter with a zash sound. The researcher screams, realizing he was betrayed, and desperately warns Sasha to run before he succumbs to his injuries. Sasha, holding a young boy, cowers in fear as a large sword descends. A large, imposing building stands under a dark night sky. Lady Katia, with glowing purple eyes and blood on her cheek, smiles sinisterly while holding the black collar. Lady Cattleya, with glowing purple eyes, identifies Jean as the Crown Prince of Lycal. Lady Cattleya finds Jean's unflinching demeanor captivating and deems him a worthy target. Ryuka and the hooded man continue walking through the town, pursuing their mission. Ryuka gazes out from the moving carriage as it travels through a town. Lady Cattleya looks thoughtfully from within the carriage. Ryuka looks on with a determined expression bathed in light. A cloaked figure races forward, their boots pounding the ground. A large, imposing building stands under a dark night sky. Ryuka stands with a stern, focused expression, ready for action. Ryuka's eyes are wide with stress as he thinks, ugh. Ryuka and the hooded man discover a body lying in a pool of blood, strewn with roses and overturned furniture. Ryuka runs through a grand hallway, his cloak flowing behind him. Sasha cowers next to a dead body on the blood-stained floor as a sword descends. A hooded figure raises a dagger in preparation to strike. Ryuka intervenes, holding a sword to the chest of the hooded figure. Ryuka places his foot on the chest of the downed hooded figure, who groans, ugh. The hooded figure looks agitated, thinking, damn it. Ryuka stands protectively over Sasha, holding his sword ready. The hooded figure again thinks, damn it, as Ryuka kneels to comfort Sasha. Ryuka embraces Sasha, offering him comfort and protection. In a flashback, a man asks Ryuka to take care of Sasha, who stands beside him as Ryuka cradles the child. Ryuka walks alone down a long stone hallway. A table is cluttered with stacks of research papers and small vials. Ryuka reads through documents in a study, reflecting on the extensive research conducted. Ryuka thinks about the collar's modifications and how Lady Anemone's suspicions were accurate. Ryuka looks down with a troubled and pensive expression. The magnificent Amphnus castle stands proudly under a bright, cloudy sky. Anemone looks concerned as Jean tells her they didn't make it in time. Jean looks away with a troubled expression. Jean reflects on the magical device designed to control humans. Anemone questions who would create such a dangerous device. Venom Disan stares forward with a calm, yet unsettling expression. Anemone and Jean both look on with expressions of deep concern. Jean informs Anemone that Prince Venom is hosting a ball tonight, warning that anything could happen. Anemone declares with determination that she will protect her brother, regardless of who targets his life. A vision shows venomous Impusa falling from a balcony as Lady Catalea watches from above. Jean gently takes Anemone's hands, asking if she is all right. Anemone looks up with a startled and worried expression. Anemone and Jean stand close, engaged in a serious discussion. A grand ballroom is filled with elegantly dressed guests, illuminated by chandeliers. Anemone smiles serenely, surrounded by pink roses. Prince Venom smiles charmingly, surrounded by golden flowers. Two women at the ball admire Jean, recognizing him as the Crown Prince of Lycol and calling him wonderful. Prince Venom asks Anemone if she will be all right on her own. Anemone smiles, reassuring Prince Venom not to worry. Prince Venom gently touches Anemone's arm, stating he will see. Prince Venom walks away from Anemone on the grand patterned carpet. Prince Venom turns back, his face filled with concern, asking Anemone if she is sure she will be okay. Anemone waves cheerfully, confirming she'll be fine, and tells Prince Venom to go ahead. Prince Venom walks deeper into the bustling crowd of the ball. Anemone watches Prince Venom walk away, her expression pensive as she stands amidst the ball guests. Guests at the ball laugh and enjoy themselves in the grand hall. Anemone walks away, her back to the viewer, through the lavish ballroom. Anemone looks startled and concerned as someone off-screen addresses her as Princess Anemone. Anemone stands in a formal gown, while the gray-haired man from a lower panel expresses his honor at meeting her again. Anemone's expression shifts to one of deep shock and distress. Anemone's face is filled with growing horror and alarm. Anemone reluctantly grants permission, then inwardly questions why the gray-haired man is present as hazy images of him and a structure appear. The gray-haired man cries out, "Ugh!" shrouded in mist, with glowing energy emanating from his hands. Anemone's eyes narrow with anger as she inwardly declares she hasn't forgotten his past actions. Anemone stands face to face with the gray-haired man in the opulent hall. The gray-haired man asks Anemone if she remembers him from their childhood encounter. Anemone, looking clearly displeased, demands to know what he wants to say. The gray-haired man, acknowledging her busyness, asks if he may present his proposal. The gray-haired man reassures Anemone that his proposal won't harm her and asks her to listen. The gray-haired man introduces his nephew, Wisteria Oxalis, praising him as gallant, good-looking, and clever. The gray-haired man formally proposes that Anemone consider his nephew, Wisteria Oxalis, as a potential fiancé. Anemone looks utterly bewildered, inwardly questioning the meaning of his proposal. Anemone stands dismayed, privately wondering why he would choose to use her specifically. Anemone, partially obscured, considers a thought, wondering what if, as the gray-haired man holds a wine glass. Anemone leans in close to the gray-haired man, directly asking if he would beg for her forgiveness. The gray-haired man reacts with wide-eyed shock, his hands clasped in front of him. Anemone addresses the gray-haired man by his title, Duke Oxalis, as he holds a glass of wine. Anemone, her face etched with fury, harshly commands Duke Oxalis to leave her sight before she speaks more insultingly. Duke Oxalis remains standing with his wine glass as Anemone turns her back to him in the ballroom. Anemone silently vows that she will never forgive Duke Oxalis. Anemone's face is illuminated, displaying a resolute and determined expression amidst glowing roses. The grand ball continues, with guests laughing and enjoying the festivities. Anemone anxiously looks around the crowded ball, asking, "Where is my brother?" Jean and Ryuka walk together down a long, lavish hallway, away from the bustling ball. Jean instructs Ryuka to wait there before proceeding alone. Jean reflects that Crown Prince Venom of Amphnus invited him to discuss slavery, but he dislikes the unsettling atmosphere of the room. A door is seen slightly ajar, suggesting someone is about to enter or has just left. Lady Catalea smiles serenely, surrounded by pink roses in the grand hall. Jean expresses surprise upon seeing Lady Catalea. Jean questions Lady Catalea's presence, and she explains that Crown Prince Venom had urgent business. Jean speculates Lady Catalea came on Crown Prince Venom's behalf, then realizes she was the one who actually sent the invitation, intending to speak with him alone. Jean acknowledges his awareness of Anfnis's reliance on slavery, believing Lady Catalia kindly intervened to invite him. John chastises Lady Catalia, stating her actions are inappropriate for her royal standing. Lady Catalia smiles, dismissing Jean's criticism as a harsh remark about her husband, but admits she was the one who asked Crown Prince Venom to write the invitation. Jean directly confronts Lady Catalia, demanding to know what she wants from him. Jean, looking pensive, detects a scent, wondering if it's the fragrance of flowers. Lady Catalia, crossing her arms, smiles confidently, and declares her desires are easy to achieve. Jean's face contorts in distress as he realizes he's being affected by magic, thinking, oh, no. Lady Catalia smiles sinisterly, holding the black magic collar, revealing her true intention was to control Jean. Lady Catalia moves closer to Jean, reaching for his neck with a menacing smile. John cries out in shock and pain as a magical device begins to affect his neck. Lady Catalia stands close to Jean, thinking about how innocent he appears. Lady Catalia smiles menacingly at a distressed Jean, wondering aloud how he will break down under her influence. Lady Catalia urges Jean to show her how an innocent person like him will react to her magic. Lady Catalia again smiles sinisterly, repeating her morbid curiosity about how Jean will break down. Lady Catalia and Jean stand opposite each other, silhouetted against a grand window with flowing red curtains. John looks on with a composed yet subtly weary expression. Lady Catalia commands Jean to come on, my dear, and get down on your knees. Lady Catalia, with a sinister smile, demands Jean, listen to my orders. Jean kneels before Lady Catalia, who then asks him if he will kiss her. Jean obediently kisses Lady Catalia's foot, earning a pleased well done from her. Lady Catalia holds a dagger to Jean's neck, ominously mentioning your sister Anemone. Lady Catalia commands a distressed Jean to kill Anemone with his own hands. Lady Catalia hands Jean a dagger, suggesting it will be easy to stab Anemone when her guard is down. Lady Catalia gleefully anticipates the look on Anemone's face when betrayed by Jean, who appears conflicted. Lady Catalia leans in, smiling menacingly, asking Jean if he can carry out her orders. Jean struggles against the collar's control, internally defying the order to hurt Anemone and wishing for her to run away. Anemone walks alone, down a long, opulent castle hallway. Anemone looks surprised, turning her head as if hearing something. Anemone closes her eyes in distress, hands clasped, wishing for someone to be safe. Anemone stands before a grand, ornate golden door. Lady Catalia stands casually within a lavish room. Lady Catalia gracefully descends a short staircase in the ornate room. Lady Catalia smiles menacingly. Surrounded by purple flowers, Anemone looks distressed in the grand hallway. Anemone shows a worried and uncertain expression. Lady Catalia secretly observes Anemone from behind a red curtain. Lady Catalia smiles with sinister satisfaction, exclaiming, there is a god after all. Anemone looks on with concern as she spots Jean standing by a window. Anemone's eyes widen in horror, realizing the collar is already there on Jean, glowing with dark magic. Jean, visibly struggling and shaking while holding a dagger, warns Anemone to stay back to avoid harm. Lady Catalia observes Jean's strong resolve, adding an ominous, and yet Lady Catalia declares Jean's resistance futile, as Jean cries Q while the magical collar tightens its hold. Anemone cries, brother! As Jean pushes her away. Jean cries egg in pain as Anemone looks terrified, caught in his grasp. Anemone internally pleads to stop, fearing her magic will harm Jean at such close proximity. Jean, under the collar's control, raises a dagger, poised to strike Anemone. Anemone is affected by an unseen force, with blood splattering. Lady Catalia looks triumphant as Jean stands, apparently forced to harm someone, amidst a red splash. Anemone cries, ah! In horror, Jean cries, Coo! In pain, then Anemone embraces Jean, reassuring him that he is okay. Lady Catalia, observing Anemone and Jean, scoffs at their brotherly love, finding it almost repulsive. Lady Catalia, emanating immense magic, declares her orders absolute. Jean cries, ooh, as the magical collar's power intensifies, binding him with purple chains. Jean pushes Anemone, yelling, run! As Anemone realizes the magic is taking her consciousness and begins to flee. Jean, standing on a balcony with blood on the floor, thinks he would rather not hurt Anemone. Jean's face shows a look of grim determination. Jean displays a subtle, unsettling smile while wearing the glowing magical collar. Jean walks forward with a determined stride, still wearing the magical collar. Lady Catalia smiles sinisterly, looking pleased with her manipulation. Anemone, with wide, panicked eyes, reaches out and declares, I won't let you die. Anemone desperately reaches out to Jean as he falls from the balcony. Anemone and Jean fall together, Anemone internally lamenting that her power alone cannot overturn the prophecy. Anemone closes her eyes in distress, desperately calling out, "Please, Ryuka!" Ryuka emerges, looking determined amidst bright foliage. Ryuka touches a glowing jewel on his uniform. Ryuka looks up intently, reaching towards something out of frame. Ryuka catches Anemone and Jean, all three falling together, wrapped in white fabric. Ryuka is shocked, realizing Anemone's prediction about His Highness falling came true as he observes Jean lying on the ground. Anemone, distressed, declares they must remove the magical collar from Jean. Anemone and Jean embrace in a field, surrounded by light, as Ryuka observes them from above. Lady Catalea, surrounded by purple magical energy, confidently declares her spell cannot be broken. Jean cries oog as he struggles against the collar, while Anemone intensely focuses, channeling power to break the magic. Anemone internally vows to save Jean, just as he once saved her from despair. Anemone reaches out, her hands splattered with blood, displaying a serious expression. Anemone, with blood on her hands and hair, intensely channels her power, eyes closed in pain and concentration. The glowing magical collar on John's neck shatters into pieces. Anemone clutches her chest, looking exhausted and in pain, with blood splattered on her dress. Ryuka catches the falling Anemone, crying out her name in concern. Anemone, cradled by Ryuka, weakly asks about her brother Jean. Ryuka holds Anemone as Jean, looking distraught, approaches them. Ryuka looks at Jean, then checks on Anemone, calling her name. Anemone joyfully embraces Jean, relieved and smiling. Anemone, still embracing Jean, expresses immense relief that he is safe. Jean looks at Anemone with a tearful, pained expression. Anemone, Jean, and Ryuka rest together in a peaceful, sunlit field. Lady Catalea, on a high balcony, angrily grips the railing. Lady Catalea stands on the opulent balcony, observing the scene below. Lady Katia, with glowing pink eyes, expresses frustration that the collar is off and her magic was broken. Lady Catalea observes Anemone's reckless act, calling her jump a careless one. Jean cradles Anemone's head, wondering what is wrong with her. Ryuka looks at Jean, remarking that he must have endured something terrible. Anemone and Ryuka stand together, discussing that the disturbance regarding Jean was dealt with in secret. Jean, Anemone, and Ryuka are in a field, observed by various figures from a distance. The blonde royal, surrounded by other figures, expresses shock and confusion about what has happened. A man reports to the blonde royal that Jean seems to have been manipulated, suggesting Amphnis is responsible, while another informs Your Highness that the Oxalis family has called. The blonde royal, looking stern, acknowledges the situation as he stands with his entourage and observes Anemone and Jean from afar. The blonde royal smiles, asserting they need a top-class healer immediately and vowing to find the culprits. Jean is in bed, being tended to by the blonde royal, who holds a cup. Jean holds a cup, looking pensive and thoughtful. Jean, sitting up in bed, listens as the blonde royal explains their suspicion of a cover-up regarding the accidental death of a foreign prince. Jean closes his eyes, stating his memory is hazy, possibly because the collar broke. Jean declares one thing is clear: Princess Catalea, as Anemone reacts with a start. Jean, still in bed, recalls only being summoned by Lady Catalea. Jean tells the blonde royal that he doesn't remember much more. Anemone, looking displeased, wonders if she can hate Lady Catalea. Anemone and Jean sit at a table with the blonde royal, who dismisses a new invitation as a dangerous joke that Anemone shouldn't accept. Anemone, surrounded by flowers, wonders what Lady Catalea is thinking. A grand, multi-spired castle with purple roofs stands under a clear sky. Lady Catalea, Anemone, and the blonde royal are seated at an outdoor tea party. The table is laden with various exquisite desserts, pastries, and tea. Lady Catalea smiles warmly, expressing her gladness that Anemone is there today. Anemone and the blonde royal look on, while Anemone maintains a neutral expression. Lady Catalea laughs, playfully gesturing for them not to be so formal. Two maids serve refreshments at the tea party where Lady Catalea and Anemone are present. Lady Catalea, in a small cutout panel, states she has brought rare fruit from the south, while Anemone, in another small panel, looks on with a slight smile. Lady Catalea smiles broadly amidst roses, while Anemone sighs and looks downcast, appearing resigned. A maid informs Lady Catalea that her hair and dress are messy, while Anemone observes the scene at the tea party. Anemone politely asks Lady Catalea to share details about Lycal. Anemone maintains a composed yet inquisitive expression, surrounded by delicate blue flowers. Anemone internally expresses surprise at having such a casual chat with Lady Catalea across the tea table. Lady Catalea smiles, appearing charming and innocent. Lady Catalea internally wishes she could visit Lycal one day, holding a beautiful rose. Lady Catalea extends an offer of friendship to Anemone, who questions the idea. Anemone wonders if she and Lady Catalea are truly similar, after Lady Catalea explains she is a rare wizard, the saintess of Lycal, loved and talented like herself. Lady Catalea smiles broadly, appearing to enjoy the conversation. Lady Catalea explains Anemone is a rare wizard known as the saintess in Lycal, talented and loved by the country, which makes Anemone realize there's another person like her in this world. Lady Catalea maintains a pleasant closed-lip smile. A close-up shows Lady Catalea's ornate dress amidst pink flowers. Anemone firmly declares that she cannot be friends with Lady Catalea. Lady Catalea reacts with a look of surprise and slight shock at Anemone's direct refusal. Anemone and Lady Catalea sit opposite each other at the tea party, with the elaborate table of refreshments between them. Lady Catalea looks away, a subtle shift in her expression. Anemone observes Lady Catalea, thinking to herself with a knowing look that Lady Catalea has taken the bait. Lady Catalea's eyes widen in surprise, facing Anemone. Lady Catalea, with a sly smile, dismisses Anemone as a funny girl. A wide shot reveals Lady Catalea and Anemone continuing their conversation at the outdoor tea party. Lady Catalea calmly admits to having created the black collar, taking a sip of tea. Anemone, looking distressed, asks if Lady Catalea also put the collar on Jean, to which Lady Catalea readily confirms. Anemone angrily demands Lady Catalea's reasons, but Lady Catalea coolly states she can't talk to anyone who isn't her friend. Anemone's eyes are wide with shock and horror. Lady Catalea laughs gleefully, seeming to enjoy Anemone's reaction. Lady Catalea casually reveals that the researchers are dead, and the testimony of surviving children won't help Anemone's case. Lady Catalea, surrounded by purple magic, confidently questions which side of the argument people will believe, holding a rose. Anemone glares, accusing Lady Catalea of understanding the terrible situation yet not caring. Lady Catalea smiles, dismissing Anemone's outrage with a playful gesture. Anemone looks distressed, realizing Lady Catalea is blackmailing her. Anemone internally reflects that if she were Lady Camille, she would have succumbed to Lady Catalea's repeated threats. Anemone stands with a determined expression among other figures, suggesting a new resolve. Anemone, with an angered expression, vows not to forgive Lady Catalea if she dares to harm her family. Anemone declares with fierce conviction that she promises to protect her family. Lady Catalea bursts into laughter, clearly amused by Anemone's defiant declaration. Lady Catalea and Anemone sit across from each other, Lady Catalea's laughter echoing through the scene. Lady Catalea smiles, confidently stating she looks forward to what Anemone will do. Anemone stares intently, her expression serious and resolute. Lady Catalea sips her tea, deeming the situation a waste of her time. Anemone decides there's no longer any point in staying. Lady Catalea bids Anemone farewell, saying she'll see her soon as Anemone begins to leave. Anemone pauses, stating she has one last question for Lady Catalea. Anemone asks Lady Catalea how she truly felt when Lady Camille died. Lady Catalea looks surprised, questioning Anemone's reason for asking. Lady Catalea claims she was sad because they were blood sisters, while Anemone looks on with a knowing expression. Lady Catalea, with a subtle smirk, explains her father hated her sister, but she herself was attached and sorry when Lady Camille died. Anemone's eyes are filled with sorrow as she realizes the truth about Lady Catalea's nature. Anemone reveals her insight, concluding that Lady Catalea uses people and discards them like junk, regretting that she only discovered this now. Lady Catalea stands up and bids Anemone farewell. Anemone steps forward with a determined expression, her ornate dress and shoes gleaming. Anemone walks away into a sunlit path, declaring she no longer considers Catalea her sister, while Catalea dismissively thinks, whatever. Anemone intensely looks forward, internally vowing to stop Catalea. Anemone walks along a beautiful garden path. A zar sound effect accompanies her movement. Anemone looks utterly exhausted, internally admitting how truly tired she is. Jean stands formally by a grand golden gate, while Anemone sits quietly in the foreground amidst lush greenery. Jean gently reaches out towards Anemone, both standing in a field of vibrant yellow flowers. A grand royal carriage waits as Jean and the blonde royal observe from the foreground. A smiling man with long dark blue hair, adorned with an ornate brooch, extends his hand. Anemone looks surprised, her eyes wide as she observes the man. The man, with a gentle smile, states their business is done here and suggests they return to Lycal. Anemone firmly declares that she has a family who means more to her than anything. A promotional image displays recruitment for various roles and a banner for manga chapters, indicating a break in the narrative. A magnificent castle with pink roofs stands under a bright sky as a speech bubble announces their return from Anfnis. A serene garden with a fountain is shown, followed by Anemone peacefully reading a book while sitting under a tree. Two surprised maids exclaim, calling out for Lady Anemone. The maids search for Anemone, wondering where she is, while Anemone continues to read, hidden by a tree. Anemone, accompanied by a man, interacts with a group of cheerful common folk in a village square. Anemone sits at a table, engrossed in a book, while three other men in white coats examine their own books. Anemone observes as other women, including a maid holding a dress, discuss the queen and maids being after her. Anemone lets out a soft sigh, looking slightly overwhelmed by her circumstances. Anemone stands pensively in a forest, holding a book. As text explains, the black collar case is confidential, and Anfnis has yet to respond. Anemone considers the long time it will take to settle the case, and the frightening prospect of Catalea becoming queen, wondering about the country's future. Anemone's ornate dress and delicate shoes are visible as she walks through the lush green grass. Anemone gently brushes her hair back, gazing with a thoughtful expression. The blonde royal smiles brightly, standing amidst green trees under a clear blue sky. The blonde royal approaches Anemone, informing her that everyone is looking for her. The blonde royal smiles, expressing a feeling that Anemone would be in this spot. The blonde royal asks Anemone why she has taken time off from her duties and research. Anemone, with a relaxed expression, casually states that she is skipping work today. The blonde royal smiles, remarking that he doesn't know about Anemone skipping work. Two men, one of them Ryuka, look shocked, asking if Anemone isn't present. Jean urges Ryuka to find Anemone, promising to buy him anything he wants as a reward. Jean and Ryuka look down with urgent expressions, imploring for Ryuka's help. The blonde royal recounts the situation to Anemone, then dismisses the other's reactions as exaggerations. The blonde royal smiles softly, his eyes closed in contentment. Anemone looks surprised, asking the blonde royal what he will do, specifically if he will report her location. Anemone and the blonde royal sit on the grass together, and he announces that he is also skipping work today. The blonde royal smiles brightly, assuring Anemone that if she gets in trouble for skipping, he will share the same fate. Anemone beams with a joyful smile, looking content and pleased. The blonde royal gazes at Anemone with a warm and gentle expression. The blonde royal looks flustered, stating he can't help his reaction when Anemone addresses him as my lady. Anemone smiles warmly at Ryuka, expressing her gratitude for his consistent help. Jean looks at Anemone with a concerned expression, calling her Lady Anemone and acknowledging her constant support. Anemone closes her eyes, her expression somber as she states that she is worried. Anemone tells Jean that he has a bright future and encourages him to cherish his life more deeply. John, with a determined gaze, declares he finally has the strength to be useful to Anemone. Jane smiles sincerely, expressing his immense happiness about his newfound ability to be helpful. Anemone looks at Jean with a thoughtful and gentle expression. Anemone and Jean sit facing each other in the lush green field, engaged in a quiet conversation. Jean asks Anemone if there's anything she would like him to do, offering to give her anything she desires. Ryuka smiles contentedly, with his eyes closed, amidst a vibrant green landscape. Anemone states she doesn't want anything, but adds that it doesn't make her feel better, as Ryuka listens beside her. Anemone looks at Ryuka intently, asking him to tell her something. Ryuka smiles sheepishly, admitting that her request presents a problem for him. Ryuka, with closed eyes, then asks Anemone to repeat what she said one more time. Ryuka smiles, instructing Anemone to call him her knight. Anemone looks down with a gentle smile, her hair shining brightly. Ryuka introduces himself by his full name, Ryuka Fo Gabella, holding Anemone's hand as she gazes at him. Anemone looks at Ryuka and refers to him as her great, strong knight who serves her. Anemone smiles brightly, asking Ryuka to continue supporting her. Ryuka beams with a wide smile, happily affirming his agreement. Anemone and Ryuka sit together in the sun-dappled grass, both smiling peacefully. A majestic castle with red roofs stands surrounded by autumn trees under a clear sky. A bustling village square is filled with people and market stalls, adorned with colorful banners. Anemone, accompanied by several men, including Ryuka, walks through the lively village. Anemone observes as a man presents her with a beautifully wrapped gift, adorned with flowers. Anemone's brother looks down at her, wondering if she doesn't need a ring, while Anemone admits she has been wanting to give him one but hasn't decided yet. Ryuka stands with a serious expression, looking off to the side, his thoughts unknown. Ryuka asks Anemone what is wrong, but she reassures him it is nothing. Anemone gazes thoughtfully, surrounded by delicate white flowers. A grand, ornate castle stands under a bright sky with sparkling effects. Anemone's father and mother sit at a richly decorated table filled with sweets and stacked gifts as her father announces a gift from them. Anemone looks with wide eyes into a gift box filled with sparkling jewelry and what appears to be shoes. Anemone's father and mother smile happily, with her father stating that the gift contains some of the most precious gems from the East. Anemone's eyes sparkle as she looks at the gift, softly addressing her father. Anemone's mother smiles gently, asking if Anemone will accept the gift. Anemone smiles broadly and happily, accepting the gift. Anemone's father hands her a small, glowing red gift box. Anemone's father holds out an open ring box with a sparkling blue gem, wishing her happiness and health. Anemone's father and mother smile, assuring Anemone that they are definitely on her side. Anemone looks tearful but content, expressing her love for her mother and father. Anemone stands with her parents, having a warm family moment in the richly decorated room. Ryuka and Anemone's brother sit comfortably on a couch, surrounded by many colorful gifts. Anemone, dressed in a yellow gown, asks what all the gifts are, while her brother and Ryuka stand by. Anemone's brother smiles, explaining it's a gift from the people to both of them, adding that Anemone is the most popular girl in the country. Anemone's brother smiles gently, surrounded by blooming flowers. Anemone looks surprised as her brother offers her a sparkling ring in a box. Anemone's brother looks kindly at her, saying she's grown big and doesn't need his help, but hoping she'll continue to rely on him as a brother. Anemone leans into her brother's comforting hug, finding solace. Anemone, embraced by her brother in a room full of gifts, tells him she is always so proud of him. Anemone stands alone in a sunlit hallway, looking thoughtful. Anemone closes her eyes, appearing serene in a close-up. Anemone gently holds the ring given to her, which sparkles on her palm. A grand, elegant building stands under a bright blue sky. Anemone thinks that Ryuka is here, looking towards the door where he stands with his back to her. Ryuka looks surprised as a brown-haired woman, also in uniform, pleads to Master Ryuka. The brown-haired woman passionately declares her feelings, holding out a ring in a box. Ryuka offers a soft, understanding smile, observing the woman's emotional confession. Anemone looks on with wide, surprised eyes at the scene unfolding. Anemone places a hand over her heart, a gesture of surprise or concern. A gyu sound is heard. Jean looks pensive as a brown-haired woman stands in the background, while below, Anemone descends a grand staircase. Anemone recalls telling Ryuka he could do whatever he wanted, wearing a serene expression. Jean frantically calls out Anemone's name, startling her from behind. Anemone looks surprised, her eyes wide, and a slight blush on her cheeks. Jean stands close behind Anemone, both framed by delicate white flowers. Jean questions Anemone's presence, wondering why she isn't back at the villa. Jean urgently reaches for Anemone's hand, demanding she wait a minute. Anemone defensively pulls her hand back from Jean, denying taking anything. Anemone maintains a surprised, innocent expression, surrounded by a decorative floral pattern. Jean apologizes for his accusation, looking distressed, and Anemone quickly apologizes in return. Jean and Anemone stand facing each other in quiet reflection, surrounded by soft pink blossoms. A close-up shows Jean's determined eyes, a faint blush visible on his face. Jean holds out a ring, asking Anemone if she would accept it. Anemone covers her mouth in shock, her eyes wide with surprise. Jean expresses concern that offering a ring might be disrespectful, as Anemone listens intently. Jean appears flustered and anxious, a bead of sweat on his forehead. Jean ponders if Anemone truly understands the significance of receiving a ring, while a small, confused Anemone appears in his thoughts. Jean kneels before Anemone, presenting the ring as a pledge to serve her for the rest of his life. Jean gazes up, holding the ring, his expression filled with hope and expectation amidst white flowers. Jean bows his head, making his heartfelt offer as Anemone looks down in surprise, a hand on her chest. Jean kneels before Anemone, presenting the ring and reaffirming his lifelong pledge of service. Jean looks up with a hopeful and slightly vulnerable expression while holding out the ring. Jean bows deeply before Anemone, who maintains a surprised expression, receiving his profound declaration. Anemone looks at the ring in her hand, asking Jean why he would make such a gesture. Jean looks surprised as Anemone gently pushes his hand away. Anemone sadly looks down at the ring in her palm, offering it back to Jean. Jean's eyes widen in shock as Anemone extends the ring back to him. Jean looks intently at Anemone, who holds out the ring, surrounded by vibrant yellow flowers. A close-up reveals Jean's eyes filled with sadness and disappointment. Jean's hand hangs limply, surrounded by white blossoms reflecting his dejected mood. Anemone stands beside Jean, both smiling softly, with Anemone stating her desire to discover things with him. A bustling village square with market stalls, people, and buildings with windmills under a clear sky. A smiling man in a red hat presents something unseen, asking how it is liked. A thought bubble suggests there are some good girls here, appearing over a crowd of people. A noble woman in pink smiles gracefully as a man in a red hat thanks her for her purchase. A crowd of people react with wide-eyed alarm and open mouths. People shriek in terror, crying out, "Kya!" as unseen events unfold around them. The noblewoman in pink requests to see more interesting items, and the man in the red hat assures her everything is prepared. The man in the red hat walks past stacked wooden crates in a market alley, followed by the woman in pink. The man in the red hat leads the woman in pink through a dark stone corridor, lighting the way with a candle. Large, ornate double doors creak open, revealing a bright light emanating from within. A grand arena or gambling hall bustles with spectators and gamblers, a lion performing on stage in the background. 3 individuals are engrossed in a game of cards at a gambling table, chips and cards spread before them. A showman directs a lion as it leaps through a flaming hoop, much to the crowd's excitement. The noblewoman thinks of the place as an arena for monsters and slaves, while a fierce purple monster attacks 2 figures below. A terrifying purple monster with glowing eyes lets out a guttural roar, causing people to scream "wah" in panic. The purple monster brutally slashes at people, drawing blood as one person screams "ah" in pain. A crowd of well-dressed spectators eagerly cheers and waves money. A person collapses bleeding, another screams "eek" while being attacked, and a third cries "egg" as the monster advances. 2 men valiantly fight the purple monster with swords, one showing a leg wound with blood. Catalia looks utterly surprised as glowing lines of energy surround her. Catra holds a gleaming sword with a determined expression, surrounded by magical light. Catalia's father proudly declares an item to be their most popular, while Catalia looks on with a hint of displeasure. Catre stands poised with his sword in a stone room, facing 2 ominous shadowy figures with animalistic ears. Catre engages in a dynamic sword fight, but is ultimately impaled and collapses, blood splattering the ground. A jubilant crowd cheers, holding money, celebrating a victory or performance. Catalia smiles unsettlingly with glowing pink eyes, as her father explains they captured the last remnants of the Blanche tribe from the frontier, remarking on the effort it took. Catre stands with his sword over defeated figures, as a voice asks his name, which is revealed to be Catre. Catalia's father smiles, expressing his satisfaction that they enjoyed his actions. Catalia's father expresses lingering doubt, and Catalia asks for clarification, while sinisterly thinking that a man's most beautiful expression is one contorted with pain and despair. Catalia grins unsettlingly, her pink eyes glowing with a dark satisfaction. Catre looks on with a serious expression, his thoughts unclear. A magnificent, sprawling castle with red roofs stands under a sparkling blue sky. Anemone looks subtly surprised, her gaze focused. The gray-haired official solemnly affirms the statement with a focused gaze. The gray-haired official explains to Anemone that Bells serves as a sanctuary for the wealthy to keep their money. The gray-haired official, in a chibi panel, explains that the location is considered a neutral zone. Anemone, in a chibi panel, expresses her determination to investigate the full extent of the slave trade in that country. Anemone looks thoughtful as the gray-haired official explains the region is ruled by a duke from Anphis, stating his desire to confirm if slavery exists there. The gray-haired official states he will need to find a replacement for his current duties. Anemone looks surprised, internally stating that if Anphis is involved, she wants to witness it herself. The gray-haired official smiles gently, his eyes closed in a warm expression. The gray-haired official hands a document to Anemone across the desk, finalizing their discussion. A majestic sailing ship approaches a vibrant port city, bathed in the bright sunlight. Anemone, in a new outfit, holds a bag as her blonde brother follows, carrying their luggage. Anemone informs her blonde brother and the gray-haired official that she will go put down her luggage. The gray-haired official watches Anemone walk away, then expresses his deep worry with a concerned gaze. The gray-haired official tells the blonde man that Anemone is the most qualified for this mission, and the blonde man acknowledges his understanding. The gray-haired official questions the blonde man about an item's origin, sensing Anemone's magic, and then asks to see it, to the blonde man's surprise. The gray-haired official laughs, then dismissively claims he was only joking. The blonde man expresses his disbelief that the gray-haired official was truly joking. The gray-haired official looks serious and instructs someone to support Anemone well. A close-up shows the blonde man's formal uniform adorned with medals. A large sailing ship cruises calmly across the ocean as the sun sets. Anemone stands on the ship's deck, looking out at the horizon, deep in thought. Anemone reflects that she hasn't had any prophetic dreams since, but the very thought of Anphis makes her heart sick. Anemone, Looking thoughtful, wonders about Anphis, a country that trades people into slavery. Anemone stands on the ship's deck, bathed in moonlight, under a starlit night sky. An aerial view shows a bustling port city with a large ship docked at a long pier. Anemone steps off the ship onto the pier, where she is greeted by the blonde man, with luggage piled nearby. The blonde man warmly welcomes Anemone to the port, addressing her as, "My lady." Florestan, a man with a mustache, introduces himself as their guide, expressing delight in welcoming the Royal Highness and her party. Anemone smiles softly with her eyes closed, accepting the welcome. Anemone and the blonde man walk amongst a group, as the blonde man's internal thought reveals their supposed guide is actually monitoring them. A vibrant city with distinctive architecture and palm trees unfolds under a bright, mountainous sky. Anemone stands on a grand balcony, observing the city below. A scenic view of the port city is accompanied by Anemone's thoughts on their lack of knowledge and the need to understand the country better. Florestan and the blonde man stand together, deep in conversation. Florestan and the blonde man recoil in shock, the blonde man exclaiming, "What the hell?" as figures below them struggle with an axe. Florestan and the blonde man look utterly horrified as the blonde man exclaims about seeing a group of slaves. Two men emerge from a cloud of smoke, one holding a dagger, looking at a wooden cylinder lying amidst the vapor. A grand building with domes and palm trees is partially obscured by smoke, while inside, a man and two maids look alarmed, asking, "What's going on?" and fire. Anemone looks cautiously out a doorway, with palm trees and a bright sky visible outside. Anemone stands in the doorway, holding a small item, looking surprised and asking, "What's going on?" as a thump sound is heard. Anemone, with a thoughtful expression, internally reflects that Ryuka was out scouting and hopes he is okay. The blonde brother, holding a sword, faces two men armed with an axe and a stick, ready for a confrontation. A man bites down on a knife, exclaiming, "Eek!" while the blonde brother fiercely asks, "What the hell do you want?" with his sword drawn. The blonde brother fights with his sword against two men in a courtyard, one of whom is already on the ground, while a maid runs in the background. The blonde brother's face shows a look of intense surprise and concern. A dark-haired man's arm extends across the panel, appearing to strike or move swiftly. The blonde brother crosses two swords defensively above his head, his face showing strain. The blonde brother grits his teeth, holding his sword firmly as he withstands an unseen force. The dark-haired man with yellow eyes smiles sinisterly, thinking he has found some work for himself. The dark-haired man with yellow eyes smiles sinisterly, thinking he has found some work for himself. Several unconscious or dead figures lie on the stone ground of a courtyard, with blood splattered, indicating a recent battle. The blonde brother stares intently with a serious and pensive expression. The dark-haired man with yellow eyes looks on with a calm but intense expression. The dark-haired man swiftly attacks the blonde brother from above, swords clashing with blue streaks of energy. Two swords clash intensely, producing a bright spark as they meet. The blonde brother and the dark-haired man engage in a fierce sword fight, their blades crossed, as the dark-haired man smirks. The blonde brother and the dark-haired man dynamically fight with swords in an open courtyard, surrounded by buildings. The blonde brother winces in pain, reacting to an impact, and thinks this guy. The dark-haired man maintains a determined and slightly menacing expression, surrounded by glowing effects. The blonde brother and the dark-haired man stand ready in a duel stance in the castle courtyard. The grand building from earlier is seen again, with a prominent plume of dark smoke rising from it. Anemone's feet, clad in a white dress, are shown walking on a tiled floor. Anemone looks surprised and worried, clutching her chest. Anemone observes from the side as a group of armed men confront someone or something. Three men demand she must be here, while another denies it, and a man with a dagger threatens someone, eliciting an eek. A man gasps, hic, in fear as a dagger is held to his neck, begging, "Don't kill me." Anemone stands calmly in a doorway, looking down at two men who are on the ground or seated, intently watching her. Anemone looks utterly shocked and concerned, holding her hand to her chest. From an overhead view, the blonde brother fights a man with a sword, while another man triumphantly exclaims, "We've got the girl." The blonde brother looks surprised and concerned, facing the intense gaze of the dark-haired man. The blonde brother reels back, holding his hand to his face and crying, "Ugh!" as if struck. The dark-haired man, with his back turned, tells his companion, "Let's pull back," as they prepare to retreat from the building. The blonde brother shouts, "Wait," with a look of urgency and shock. The dark-haired man turns and dissipates into a cloud of smoke or dust, making his escape. The blonde brother is shown lying on the ground, his face partially covered by a hand, appearing to be injured or unconscious. The dark-haired man stands over the injured blonde brother and states, "We'll settle this another time," before departing. An aerial view reveals a sprawling, somewhat run-down city with many small houses, palm trees, and distant mountains. A grander section of the city features a tall stone tower and large buildings with palm trees, contrasting with the poorer areas. Anemone sits at a desk, while two women in simple dresses stand guard by a wooden door in a stone room. Anemone looks on with a worried expression as a green-haired woman with a tattooed arm stands nearby. Anemone, looking surprised, directly asks the green-haired woman, "Why did you kidnap me?" The green-haired woman stands silently, looking at Anemone with a neutral expression. Anemone looks anxiously at the green-haired woman, asking, "Do you have any injured people?" The green-haired woman looks down with a solemn, silent expression. Anemone looks utterly shocked and distraught, holding her hand to her chest. The green-haired woman stands by the door, while Anemone below covers her mouth in horror, her eyes wide with shock. Anemone views a group of injured, bandaged people lying on the floor, and one of them expresses the awful situation. Anemone's face is etched with deep concern and distress as she observes the suffering. An injured woman laments that there is no one to heal them, and they have no money. An injured man expresses the bleak thought that if they die, they will simply be replaced by another slave. Anemone extends her hand, and sparkling blue light emanates towards an injured man, offering healing as he looks up in surprise. Anemone holds out her hands, glowing with blue energy, and asks the injured man not to move. The bandaged man looks bewildered, clutching his head, as Anemone's healing energy surrounds him. Anemone smiles gently, continuing to heal the man, while a wider view shows her among other injured individuals. Anemone's determined expression is shown in close-up as she thinks, "Stop it." Jean, with his arms crossed, watches Anemone from a doorway with a stern expression. Jean warns Anemone that she shouldn't be helping the injured, claiming that others will get jealous. Anemone maintains a calm and resolute expression, while Jean is startled, making a pio sound as she turns. Jean observes Anemone and the injured people, then his hand reaches out with a threatening gesture. Jean grabs Anemone forcefully, pulling her close and declaring her a hostage. Jean sternly orders Anemone to stay in her room, but Anemone maintains a calm, unwavering gaze. Jean leans in close, gripping Anemone's shoulders, his expression intense, while Anemone remains composed. Anemone recalls her past as Camille, never being treated as a human being and always suffering under the gaze of an older man. Anemone's past self, Camille, looks distressed, while another woman laughs, reflecting on how she was used as a toy and constantly in pain. Anemone thinks that the injured people before her are just like her past self, Camille. Anemone defiantly shouts that she will make sure of it, while Jean tries to push her away, telling her to get out of the way. Jean looks away thoughtfully, his expression serious and contemplative. The injured men remain lying on the ground, highlighting the continued plight of the captives. Jean stands with his back to Anemone, absorbed in thought, as Anemone gazes at him with a serious expression. Jean thinks that once Anemone's treatment is complete, she will be taken back to her room. Jean looks pensive, with his hair obscuring one eye, lost in contemplation. A grand, white building with a prominent tower and palm trees stands under a bright blue sky, indicating the location. Anemone sits calmly at a table decorated with green vines, her expression composed and thoughtful. Katray, formerly Jean, sits with his arms crossed, then stands before Anemone, introducing himself as their representative. Katray, standing beside another man, reiterates that he is their representative. Anemone, seated, calmly asks Katray what he wants her to do. Katray explains with a narrowed gaze that they have lived there long before the country was established. Katray reveals that since the Duchy of Bells was formed, they have been treated as slaves, with images of chained people illustrating their plight. Katray explains their reason for taking her hostage, to demand the liberation of their people from the Duke of Bells and the Kingdom of Anphis. Katray states that with the visiting crown princess as their bargaining chip, their demands will finally be considered. Anemone's eyes widen with a mix of surprise and confusion, a bead of sweat on her forehead. Anemone clutches her dress, saying "you" as she asks them to wait. Anemone, with a shocked expression, reveals her true identity as the first princess of the Kingdom of Lycol. Katray's eye widens in shock and disbelief at Anemone's revelation. Katray angrily questions Anemone, while another man clarifies that their actual target was Catalea, the crown princess of the Kingdom of Anphis. Two men express confusion, wondering if a princess and a crown princess aren't the same, and Katray then appears visibly furious at their mistake. Katray sits, arms crossed, fuming in anger over the realization of their error. Katray covers his face in dismay, realizing they kidnapped the wrong person and worrying about making an enemy of Lycol. Anemone reflects, surprised, that she was kidnapped by mistake and mistaken for Catalea. Katray and his men appear distraught, realizing that if their error is discovered, they will face execution for kidnapping royalty. Anemone looks on with wide, concerned eyes, surrounded by dark blue flowers. The door bursts open with a dramatic crash, revealing a golden-haired man with a sword, accompanied by two other men, ready for action. The golden-haired man furiously demands to know where she is, threatening to kill everyone present. The golden-haired man aggressively attacks the other men with his sword, who cry out in alarm. The golden-haired man continues his fierce assault, clashing swords with the other men in a desperate struggle. Anemone stands calmly as the golden-haired man kneels before her, while the surrounding men look on in surprise. Jean prepares to strike, but Anemone intervenes, commanding him not to harm the other men. Jean, frustrated and protective, exclaims that they had kidnapped Anemone. Anemone calmly smiles, assuring Jean that she merely accepted a friend's invitation, and nothing bad occurred. Jean, Katri, and two other men react with wide-eyed shock to Anemone's unexpected statement. Jean, looking concerned, asks if preparations can be made to invite Anemone's friends to his mansion. Magnificent white mansion with blue domes and lush palm trees stands under a clear, bright sky. A happy family enjoys a bountiful meal at a grand dining table, surrounded by food. An elderly man tends to an injured, bandaged man, while other injured individuals stand nearby. Anemone sits composedly across from Katri at a lavish table within a grand room. Katri questions Anemone's intentions, expressing concern about her actions. Anemone firmly states her dislike for oppression, indicating her moral resolve. Katri warns Anemone that slave trading is a dangerous dark side of the country, cautioning her involvement. Anemone smiles radiantly, her expression reflecting determination amidst sparkling white flowers. A green-haired woman holding flowers smiles, while other staff members diligently clean a bright, elegant room. The green-haired woman expresses her desire to repay Anemone's kindness as other staff continue their duties. Katri, looking distressed, holds his head, appearing overwhelmed. Katri sadly reveals that most of his people are treated as livestock or objects for twisted desires. Katri observes Anemone, thinking that she seems to be a genuinely good person. Anemone stands calmly before Katri, who has his back partially turned under a bright sky. Katri looks surprised, asking Anemone what she wants. Anemone offers to go choose clothes together with Katri. Katri looks away, rejecting Anemone's offer, stating he doesn't need any charity. Katri continues to decline, explaining that he doesn't care about clothes and finds it a hassle, as Anemone looks on. Anemone confidently walks ahead of Katri, leading the way. Anemone smiles determinedly, insisting that Kat will come with her to the clothing store. Katri appears annoyed, mentally calling Anemone quite stubborn. Anemone smiles brightly, reaffirming that Katri is coming with her to the clothing store. Katri looks frustrated, reiterating his thought that Anemone is quite stubborn. A busy market square bustles with people, stalls, and various buildings. Anemone stands with Katri inside a clothing store, filled with racks of garments. Anemone's eyes widen with excitement and delight as she looks around the clothing store. Katri, now in a formal new outfit, adjusts his collar uncomfortably, looking displeased. Anemone beams with satisfaction, accompanied by another smiling woman, both pleased with Katri's new appearance. Katri, looking away, asks if there are any clothes that are easier to move in. Anemone thinks to herself that the outfit is already more casual than she would prefer. A horse-drawn carriage travels along a scenic road towards a village under a bright, cloudy sky. Inside the carriage, Anemone expresses her desire for Katri to try more outfits. But he responds, "Give me a break." Katri, looking stern, states his dislike for receiving things. Anemone looks thoughtfully at Katri, musing that she understands how kindness can sometimes feel like a burden. Anemone advises Katri to consider her actions as an investment. Anemone's expression is one of focus and determination, possibly surprised by Katri's words. Katri acknowledges Anemone's persuasive communication skills, praising her way with words. Katri turns away, cautioning Anemone against getting too deeply involved in their affairs. Katri sits, crossing his arms, reflecting that their enslavement was due to their own foolishness. Katri passionately declares that he will not yield, even if it requires bloodshed, reminding Anemone that she is an outsider. Anemone clasps her hands together, deep in thought with a subtle "gu" sound. A pink-haired woman lies deceased on rocky ground amidst flowers and blood, depicting a tragic scene. A beautiful woman with blue hair, accompanied by a unicorn, reflects that she was given her abilities for times like this. Anemone states with conviction that helping Katri and his people is deeply meaningful to her. Katri gazes at Anemone with a serious and contemplative expression. The dark-haired man tells Anemone she is a strange princess, noting both her gentle kindness and a fierce look in her eyes as their carriage rides through town. The city's grand architecture and palm trees are silhouetted against a serene, star-filled night sky. Anemone is engrossed in reading, surrounded by books and scrolls in a well-lit study room. A close-up shows an open book titled History of Duchy of Bells, displaying a map and ancient text. Anemone diligently reads and writes, with an open book on the Duchy of Bells and a paper prominently displaying the word slavery. Ryuka looks shocked and concerned, asking Anemone if she has been studying all night in the library. Anemone explains she had much to investigate, thinking about how to expose the slave system in the Bells Duchy, as Ryuka listens intently. Ryuka questions Anemone, asking if she truly needs to go to such extreme lengths in her investigation. Anemone looks up, her face showing a clear expression of surprise. Ryuka acknowledges the tragic situation of the slaves, but emphasizes that the people Anemone is helping are also her kidnappers. Ryuka continues, asserting that Anemone's captors have harmed innocent people purely for their own gain. Anemone firmly states her inability to accept the oppression of people by others, while Ryuka listens. Ryuka reminds Anemone that their primary mission is simply to observe the country. Ryuka expresses his concern that Anemone is exceeding their mandate and asks what drives her intense commitment. A close-up shot shows Anemone's hands resting on a desk, surrounded by scrolls and books. Anemone looks surprised, her eyes wide, as if struck by a sudden realization or thought. Ryuka tells Anemone that her determination is admirable, but suggests it might be too much. Ryuka looks troubled in the top panel, while Anemone lies on the ground surrounded by glowing white flowers, deep in thought, in the bottom panel. Anemone, seated alone in a dark, overgrown setting, wonders how she can properly explain her feelings and motivations. Anemone's eyes are wide and her mouth slightly open, showing profound surprise. A quick step is heard as someone's leg is shown in motion. Ryuka is confronted by the dark-haired man and other figures, who ask him about his intentions, while Anemone watches from a distance. The dark-haired man with yellow eyes looks on with a calm yet intense expression. The dark-haired man speaks to Ryuka and Anemone before walking away, leaving Anemone looking visibly startled. Anemone's face shows a worried and surprised expression, with tear-like lines indicating distress. Anemone and the dark-haired man walk together on a paved path through a beautiful garden, followed by several other men. The dark-haired man calls out to Anemone, addressing her with a simple hey. The dark-haired man forcefully calls, "Hey!" again startling Anemone, who looks at him with wide, surprised eyes. Anemone looks back at the dark-haired man with a surprised and slightly concerned expression. The dark-haired man asks Anemone if she got into a fight with that knight. Anemone, looking downcast, asks if her recent argument is that obvious. As she walks with the dark-haired man, Anemone reflects that it is the first time she and Ryuka have ever fought. The dark-haired man looks at Anemone and asks for more details about her fight, saying, "About what?" Anemone reveals that Ryuka doesn't want her to handle everything alone. The dark-haired man advises Anemone to simply tell Ryuka her feelings. The dark-haired man looks pensive with sunlight illuminating his face, deep in thought. Anemone and the dark-haired man stand, with the dark-haired man asking, "What?" After a moment of silence. Anemone looks down with a somber expression, framed by glowing blue flowers. The dark-haired man sighs and then asks Anemone where they are going as they continue their walk through the garden. Anemone smiles gently, her eyes closed in a serene expression, surrounded by light and roses. A majestic, ornate palace with golden domes and lush greenery stands grandly under a bright blue sky. Anemone and the dark-haired man, along with other escorts, are formally seated in a lavish hall, and Anemone is addressed. Anemone smiles politely, expressing her thanks for being received. A gray-haired elder looks utterly surprised and slightly fearful, stuttering his response. The gray-haired elder wonders why the Princess of Lycol has brought slaves with her, while another man asks Anemone about her purpose for visiting. The dark-haired man introduces one of his companions as his friend and states he has come to present a proposal to the Duke himself. Two other men are seen, one reflecting internally that he is not skilled at negotiations. Anemone, with a determined expression, internally resolves to do her best, just like her brother, Ryuka. The group is seated in a luxurious room, facing an older man, likely the Duke, from behind. The dark-haired man looks on intently and seriously, bathed in light. Anemone, as Princess Anemone Lycol Gentiana, declares her intent to voice the people's concerns to the Duke on behalf of her anti-slavery country. The gray-haired elder looks startled and begins to speak, uttering, "However." The gray-haired elder challenges Anemone, questioning how she can protect rights while slavery persists, receiving a scoff and a hesitant, "That is," from another man. The gray-haired elder warns of severe penalties for the Bells Duchy and the Duke from Amphith if international anti-slavery treaties are violated. Anemone intensely questions the Duke, asking if he comprehends the urgency of their situation. The dark-haired man, observing Anemone, reflects that he is fortunate not to have made her an enemy. Anemone stands in a grand hall, thinking to herself that it has been a long battle. Anemone tells the gray-haired elder that the more they fought, the more issues arose, before declaring their move to abolish the slave system. Anemone smiles softly, bathed in light and surrounded by delicate glowing flowers. Anemone walks down a finely decorated hallway, approaching a closed wooden door. Ryuka, partially visible, opens the door, looking intently as Anemone approaches. Ryuka's eyes widen with surprise, uttering a small gasp of, "Ah." Ryuka holds the door open for Anemone, inviting her into the room. Anemone and Ryuka sit opposite each other at a small table, bathed in soft light from a window. Ryuka bows his head, sincerely apologizing for their previous argument. Ryuka explains to Anemone that she has been deeply involved in politics, negotiating on behalf of others. Ryuka expresses regret, acknowledging his role is to support Anemone. Anemone reminds Ryuka that open communication is essential to understand another person's thoughts. Anemone gently reaches out and touches Ryuka's chin as he remains seated. Anemone smiles warmly, surrounded by a multitude of white blossoms. Anemone tenderly cups Ryuka's face, admitting her inability to achieve things alone. Anemone gazes kindly at Ryuka, holding his face in her hands. Anemone smiles brightly, affirming that Ryuka has been her strength, and with him, she can face anything. Anemone fondly recalls a past moment, then asks Ryuka if he will scold her from now on. Ryuka smiles back at Anemone, agreeing to scold her if that is truly what she desires. Anemone laughs joyfully, her eyes closed in happiness, surrounded by delicate pink flowers. Ryuka's eyes sparkle and his cheeks flush, deeply affected by Anemone's radiant smile. Ryuka looks intently at Anemone from across the table, deep in thought. Anemone rests peacefully on a couch, her eyes closed in serene repose. Ryuka carefully drapes a light blanket over the sleeping Anemone, ensuring her comfort. The pink-haired woman, adorned in a red dress, reflects on her unique perspective of others. The gray-haired elder states he can no longer make excuses after being pressured by Princess Anemone, while the pink-haired woman watches. The pink-haired woman smiles menacingly, deeming the situation how bothersome. The pink-haired woman reveals her desire to break things she cherishes, illustrated by a vase of red roses. The pink-haired woman muses that the more affection she gives, the more beautiful their suffering becomes, yet everything she touches withers. The pink-haired woman lies on the ground, surrounded by blood and scattered flowers, with rose petals falling around her. The pink-haired woman sits among red roses, looking thoughtful with her hand to her chin. Lady of the Sleeping Shrine Maiden. A lively market bustles with people and stalls under a dramatic orange and purple sunset, a windmill visible in the distance. The man with the red hat bows his head, offering an apology. The pink-haired woman reacts with shock and anger, demanding an explanation. The man with the red hat informs the pink-haired woman that Katra was sold at Princess Anemone's request, leaving the pink-haired woman questioning the involvement of Princess Anemone. The man with the red hat speculates that Princess Anemone isn't interested in toying with slaves, offering other options, but the pink-haired woman firmly rejects them. The pink-haired woman declares her affection for a particular person, stating she won't be satisfied with anyone else. The pink-haired woman smiles cunningly, affirming her decision and suggesting a different approach. The pink-haired woman asks the man with the red hat about the availability of the underground arena. The man with the red hat confirms the arena's availability, and the pink-haired woman then inquires about its immediate use in having slaves purchased, causing the man with the red hat to question her plans. The pink-haired woman grins mischievously, stating that with her rare vacation, she intends to put on an entertaining show. An expansive night view of a coastal city unfolds, with a mountain range in the distance under a starry sky. A small figure sits on a balcony railing of a large building at night, overlooking palm trees and a vast, starry sky. The blue-haired man reflects that everything has changed since the princess arrived, and everyone's eyes are suddenly filled with hope. The green-vested man questions Katra, remarking on how strange things are and asking what is wrong. The green-vested man exclaims that forcing them to fight monsters won't make for decent betting, but then explains that the trading post's actions were on the crown princess's order. Katra declares he is going, then runs off with a determined look. An ornate palace with domes and palm trees stands under a starry night sky. Anemone holds a fork to a piece of cake, looking surprised. The blonde-haired man, smiling, presents a tray of freshly baked cookies. The blonde-haired man serves Anemone, who sits on a sofa sipping tea in a lavish room. Anemone internally notes that negotiations with Duke Bells went well, requiring further talks with Ricor, Anfith, and other representatives. The blonde-haired man watches Anemone intently. Two green-dressed women enter the room, one addressing Anemone as Lady Anemone. The two women smilingly offer Anemone a sweet from their homeland. Anemone takes a bite of the sweet, showing a look of enjoyment. Anemone declares the sweet is very delicious, as the blonde-haired man and two women smile on. The green-vested man frantically asks Anemone for help, explaining his companions were taken to the arena and Katra followed them, surprising Anemone and the blonde-haired man. Katra stands alone in a vast arena, confronting a towering black dragon under the gaze of a large crowd. Katra, covered in blood, fiercely raises his sword against the brick wall background. The dragon lets out a mighty roar, its mouth wide open, revealing sharp teeth. The pink-haired woman observes the arena from the audience, holding a champagne flute with a slight smile. Katra stands tiny against the massive dragon in the arena, with spectators in the background. Bloodied, Katra holds his sword, looking weary but resolute. Katra swings his sword at the dragon, which reacts with a growl. A close-up of the dragon's intense, glowing yellow eye is shown. The dragon brings its large claw down towards Katra. Katra screams in agony, lying on the blood-splattered ground. The man with the red hat explains to the audience that the special monster brought from the frontier won't even scratch without powerful magic, while the pink-haired woman watches. The pink-haired woman smiles wickedly, stating she wants to see more of Katra's suffering expression. Anemone and the blonde-haired man quickly run down a hall. Anemone, with the blonde-haired man, confronts armed guards, declaring that she will let herself in without an invitation. Anemone releases a powerful burst of blue energy, shattering the door and surrounding walls. Katra kneels helplessly before the looming dragon in the arena, a lone figure in despair. Katra, nearly defeated, questions if this is the end, acknowledging that death could have come at any moment. Katra lies on the dark ground, reaching out a hand, his face showing exhaustion and pain. The colossal dragon stands over Katra, its shadow engulfing him. Katra looks down with a pained expression, sweat beading on his face. Katra reflects that Anemone was an interesting young lady, seeing her image amidst swirling blue light. Katra hopes Anemone will not be troubled because of his death, her image glowing with light. The dragon lets out a deafening roar. Katra lies motionless on the blood-splattered ground, uttering a soft ugh. Anemone stands in the arena, radiating blue energy, her back to Katra, ready to face the dragon. Anemone looks on with a determined and intense gaze. The audience murmurs in shock and astonishment. The blonde-haired man helps an injured man, likely Katra, providing support. Anemone's eyes blaze with anger as she confronts the reality of an arena forcing slaves and monsters to fight. Anemone recalls a past memory of people being thrown off a cliff, thinking it is like toying with human lives. Anemone stands empowered by swirling blue light, ready to fight. The dragon lunges towards Anemone, jaws wide open. Anemone glares fiercely at the attacking dragon. Anemone's body glows with intense blue energy, highlighting her resolve. Anemone's blue energy strikes the dragon, causing it to reel back. The bewildered audience reacts in shock with a collective wah. Anemone, radiating blue energy, raises her hand and declares her resolve to prevent such suffering from ever happening again. As the arena crumbles, a powerful boom rocks the arena, sending debris flying and spectators fleeing in terror. The arena's destruction sends the audience into a screaming frenzy with cries of wah and ah. Catalea looks shocked, wondering about Anemone's absurd magic power, as a man urges her to run away quickly. Catalea, angered, wonders why Anemone fought so fiercely for others, while a man exclaims her name as she gives a sharp TCH. Catalea and her companions rush up crumbling stairs, narrowly escaping the showering debris. The arena lies shattered, the dragon defeated, as Anemone tends to Katra, with the blonde-haired man standing by. Anemone looks deeply troubled, reflecting on the chaos. Amidst the rubble, Ryuka asks Anemone how to proceed, and she resolves to find a solution and an excuse, while the blonde-haired man assists an injured Katra. Katra smiles brightly, indicating his recovery and relief. Anemone laughs joyfully, her eyes closed in pure happiness. Ryuka smiles warmly, a gentle expression on his face. The Grand Palace stands majestically, amidst palm trees under a bright, clear sky. The gray-haired elder thoughtfully writes with a quill, a look of concern on his face. Anemone, Ryuka, the blonde-haired man, and other officials sit in a formal meeting, with the gray-haired elder leading negotiations. The dark-haired, mustached man announces the successful conclusion of negotiations between the Duchy of Bells and the indigenous people. 3 attendees smile, satisfied with the negotiations' outcome. Anemone smiles, internally noting that the Duke has lost the power to refuse their demands. Ryuka gently touches a teary-eyed Katra's shoulder, offering comfort as Katra recovers from his injuries. Magnificent palace complex with grand blue domes stands surrounded by palm trees under a vibrant sky. Anemone sits with her back to the viewer, raising a hand in a gesture of contemplation. The blue-haired man looks deeply troubled, a worried expression on his face. Anemone looks thoughtful as the declaration of slave emancipation creates panic among nations, prompting diplomatic action and likely alliances with indigenous people. The blue-haired man, with his eyes closed, internally laments his own busy schedule. Anemone rests quietly, while the blonde-haired man gently thinks her name. The blue-haired man smiles warmly amidst blooming flowers, silently affirming that Anemone's actions were truly wonderful. Anemone gazes intently, surrounded by delicate pink roses. The blue-haired man tenderly calls Anemone his pride and little sister, to which she replies, "Big brother." The blue-haired man smiles serenely with closed eyes, encircled by lush foliage. Anemone smiles brightly with closed eyes, bathed in the warmth of yellow flowers. Anemone stands before the blonde-haired man and a line of guards, ready for discussion. Anemone questions if all preparations are complete. The blonde-haired man affirms that everything is ready. Anemone's intense gaze accompanies the thought that the slave issue has been partially resolved. Various scenes depict the impact of Anemone's actions, leading her to realize she must now confront her own challenges, as the blonde-haired man reports on Crown Princess Cataleya's movements. Anemone looks fiercely angry, surrounded by deep blue flowers. A grand carriage, drawn by two dark horses, proceeds along a scenic road lined with trees. Cataleya looks serious amidst pink roses, while below, a busy market street teems with life and activity. A man crouches with a boy and girl, all smiling happily, in a quaint rustic setting. Cataleya looks bored, musing that she must depart before trouble arises. A grand wooden ship is docked at a lively port, nestled among a cluster of town buildings. Cataleya stands on a ship's deck, observing a group of people. The dark-haired man presents a group of purchased slaves to Cataleya, who simply acknowledges them. The man with the red hat and another man urge haste, fearing they will be pressured to release the slaves, all because of Princess Anemone. Cataleya looks thoughtful, musing that Anemone is a mysterious person. Cataleya's gaze conveys frustration and a deeper, unspoken sentiment. Anemone stands among blue flowers, pondering the unfamiliar emotions she feels. Cataleya looks taken aback, a hint of surprise in her eyes. Cataleya watches Anemone, the blonde-haired man, and other companions from a distance in a lively town square. Anemone and Ryuka stand together, looking ahead with serious expressions. Anemone and Cataleya face each other, with a tense atmosphere between them. Anemone gazes directly ahead with a resolute expression. Anemone maintains her determined gaze amidst shimmering light. Cataleya greets Anemone, but swiftly asks her to move aside because she is in a hurry. Anemone, surprised, refuses Cataleya's request, stating she cannot let the people behind Cataleya pass. The blue-haired man and a woman with light blue pigtails stand by the sea, observing the horizon. The blue-haired man announces that an emergency meeting just decided that even Fifth Kingdom cannot enslave indigenous people, as it is now a decision by law. Cataleya reacts with disbelief, questioning if the decision is a joke. Adamantly claims her right to the purchased children, arguing she paid proper money for them. Anemone firmly states that the people Cataleya purchased are no longer slaves. Ryuka confirms Anemone's statement, agreeing that it is correct. Ryuka, the blue-haired man, and other officials stand resolute as glowing lines of light indicate the unfolding legal changes. Cataleya and her companions look on from afar, observing the scene. Cataleya declares that enough is enough, her expression showing irritation. Cataleya states the situation is unpleasant as her companions stand behind her. Anemone and Cataleya stand on a wooden pier by the ocean, facing each other. Cataleya acknowledges her defeat, noting that things never go well when she meets Anemone. Anemone, with a surprised expression, retorts that it is because Cataleya is doing something wrong. Ryuka and the blue-haired man stand among a group of freed people in a town square, smiling. Cataleya gazes intently with a critical expression, silently acknowledging Anemone's truth. Cataleya states she does not want to live the way Anemone does. Cataleya tells Anemone that her life has been so bad that any normal person would have already died. Cataleya looks up, a faint smile on her face, advising Anemone to take care of herself amidst blooming roses. Anemone looks determined, surrounded by green foliage. Cataleya and her companions stand on the deck of a wooden ship, a bright light shining from the side. Anemone walks through a town, looking thoughtful as she observes the buildings. A simple wooden crate sits on a wooden floor. Anemone stands on a ship's deck, expressing relief that she could stop Cataleya. 3 smiling women confirm Anemone's sentiment. The blue-haired man looks towards Anemone, a thoughtful expression on his face. Anemone thanks the blue-haired man, who expresses his pleasure and surprise at her actions. The blue-haired man smiles broadly, appearing content. Anemone smiles brightly, affirming her commitment. Anemone, Ryuka, and the three women wave goodbye from the ship's deck. Anemone's foot is poised on the edge of the ship's deck, a subtle transition. Ryuka looks surprised as Anemone realizes Katra didn't come. Katra stares intently, a determined look in his eyes. Katra questions why he isn't coming. Katra declares his intention to follow, addressing Anemone and Ryuka. Katra earnestly states that he owes Anemone a lifetime of debt that he cannot leave unsettled. Katra calls out Anemone's name, preparing to make a gesture. Katra kneels on the wooden floor, lowering his body. Katra holds a sword, looking directly at the viewer with resolve. Anemone, with a gentle smile, holds a sword, looking at Katra. Ryuka looks on as Katra closes his eyes, thinking about the ceremony. Katra expresses having no lingering feelings for this country. Anemone stands over kneeling Katra, touching his sword, and declares she acknowledges him as her knight. Katra places his hand over his heart, accepting the knighting. Anemone and Katra stand facing each other in a brightly lit room, Anemone handing him the sword. Katra smiles, admitting he feels a little embarrassed. Anemone smiles gently, surrounded by delicate light blue flowers, radiating calm happiness. Ryuka informs Anemone and Katra that the Knight's Oath ceremony is now complete. Ryuka sternly instructs Katra to treat Lady Anemone with proper respect from now on. Katra, Anemone, and Ryuka look at each other with questioning expressions. Anemone smiles peacefully above a ship sailing on the vast ocean under a vibrant sunset sky. A majestic castle stands proudly amidst lush greenery bathed in sparkling light. Smoke billows from a building as people flee in panic through the bustling town street. Katra, in a white uniform, readies himself with a determined gaze, preparing for action. Katra fiercely strikes a masked assailant with his weapon in the midst of a street skirmish. Katra cries ouch as he falls, holding his arm after being struck. Katra stands over a defeated assailant, remarking on his opponent's top-notch skills but rough technique, as Anemone and Ryuka observe in the background. Katra stands with other guards, having subdued the masked figure who now lies on the ground. Katra and two other guards stand confidently, having successfully resolved the conflict. Katra smiles, sharing a moment of content camaraderie with two other guards. Anemone expresses her happiness that everyone is eventually getting along, adorned with a shining green gem. Anemone reads papers while the blue-haired man writes with a quill at a grand table in a formal room. Anemone smiles contentedly, looking at the documents she holds. The blue-haired man muses that not being able to read is not that inconvenient for him. Katra holds a stack of books, dressed in a formal green and white uniform. Katra and Anemone smile with closed eyes, sitting at a table piled with books. Anemone refutes the blue-haired man's previous thought, causing him to look displeased. The blue-haired man, with a charming smile, eagerly asks Anemone what they are doing next and urges her to hurry. Anemone smiles, gesturing to the blue-haired man to wait for a moment. Katra smiles softly as Anemone reaches for a book on a tall shelf. The blue-haired man sits with crossed arms, watching Katra place books on the table. Katra asserts his seniority as Lady Anemone's knight. The blue-haired man asks Katra with a smirk if he is feeling jealous. Anemone, holding books, questions what the two men are discussing. Katra and the blue-haired man both hastily claim they are talking about nothing at all, as Anemone looks bewildered. Anemone stands before a grand assembly, reflecting on the far-reaching impact of the Duchy of Belle's Slave Liberation Declaration. Anemone states that many countries are now attempting to abolish the slave system. Anemone thinks that Anfith is the problem, showing no intent to abolish the system. Anemone notes that Anfith's tough stance will likely lead to friction with neighboring countries. Anemone finds it unsettling that Anfith remains calm and has begun diplomatic relations with other Eastern countries. The blue-haired man reflects that they must remain vigilant moving forward. The blue-haired man thinks Catalea will not remain idle, and is surely scheming something. Anemone also suspects that Catalea must be plotting something. A person's hands are shown clapping together. The gray-haired elder announces the eagerly awaited Holy Spirit Festival. Anemone looks surprised, among other attendees, in the formal hall. Anemone looks taken aback, questioning, "What's that?" The gray-haired elder explains that the priests have been requesting the festival. Anemone looks wide-eyed and shocked, surrounded by blooming roses. Anemone appears overwhelmed in the grand hall, as others around her express their excitement. Dignitaries from other countries are invited to this grand and important national event. Anemone looks distressed, exclaiming that the responsibility is too much for me. The gray-haired elder smiles, reassuring Anemone that if she cannot handle it, No one else would be suitable. 3 men, including the mustache man, agree that Lady Anemone is undoubtedly the perfect choice for the event. The blue-haired man smiles, agreeing that Anemone would be perfect for the festival. Anemone looks utterly shocked and overwhelmed, holding her hand to her mouth. Anemone looks surprised and determined, a tear escaping her eye as she clutches her hand, surrounded by delicate pink roses. A group of smiling people stand together, as Anemone thinks that everyone has high expectations of her, which used to feel heavy and burdensome. A hand clenches into a resolute fist, signifying Anemone's firm resolve. Anemone, in a formal gown adorned with blue roses, declares she will accept the role. Katri smiles warmly, thanking Anemone. A group of people admire an elaborate formal outfit displayed on a mannequin. Anemone walks away, her back to the viewer, in a simple dress, against a cracked, stark background. Anemone looks thoughtful and a little sad, a tear visible on her cheek. Anemone stands by a window, looking back, as musical notes float around her while another person plays the piano inside. Anemone looks surprised, holding a jeweled brooch with a drop of sweat on her forehead. From behind, Anemone and the older woman at the piano are seen, with Anemone's thought bubble indicating deep thought. The older woman, playing the piano, observes Anemone and states that Her Highness's tone is unique, but to be blunt, is not good. Anemone reacts with shock, gasping at the revelation that she is tone deaf. Anemone, looking downcast, accepts the fact that she is indeed tone deaf. Jean and another man react with a mix of shock and confusion as a childlike Anemone sings, with musical notes floating around her. Jean and the other man praise Anemone's singing, claiming it has character and captures her essence, while a small Anemone looks confused. 2 maids look on with confusion as a small Anemone poses a silent question to them. A childlike Anemone wonders if she is truly tone deaf, looking quite distressed. Anemone listens intently as the older woman explains that the song itself is classic and not too difficult. The older woman smiles encouragingly, stating that success depends on Anemone's efforts. A childlike Anemone clutches her hands, thinking she is not good at being expected to perform well by others. A childlike Anemone confidently declares that she will do her best with all her might. Anemone, now older and dressed in a brown gown, stands gracefully beside the older woman, who smiles near a grand piano. In a split panel, Anemone learns from a man, and then is fitted for a white gown by 2 maids. Jean approaches Anemone from behind in a grand hall, as she looks away thoughtfully. Jean smiles gently, placing a hand on Anemone's shoulder as she looks at him. Anemone, seated, discusses with Jean whether he needs to take a break. Anemone smiles brightly, expressing her desire to properly complete the task entrusted to her. Jean gazes at Anemone with a serious, contemplative expression. Jean closes his eyes, deciding that he shouldn't interfere with Anemone's determination. Jean smiles at Anemone, who also beams back, standing in a radiant setting. Anemone smiles, cheerfully responding yes to a man who calls her princess. Jean smiles, remarking that he is already more than surprised. Jean, viewed from behind, stands holding a document, a serene background, behind him. Jean and Katri sit in a lavish room, engaged in a discussion over tea. Katri smiles, apologizing for calling Jean out so suddenly, holding a document. Jean reads the document attentively, his expression thoughtful. Jean asks for Katri's opinion. Katri smiles, confirming it's a very generous offer. Katri, seated on a couch, expresses his gladness and compliments Jean for doing his best for them. Jean offers a subtle smile, holding the document, deep in thought. Katri, smiling, offers his utmost support and proposes an engagement with the House of Duke Acacia, with a woman depicted below. Jean closes his eyes, processing the proposal. A close-up highlights Jean's uniform and chest emblem. Jean closes his eyes, stating he needs a little time to think about it. Katri smiles, stating, of course, and expressing his expectation for a good answer. Jean stands in a grand doorway, appearing contemplative. Jean and 2 other men, one resembling Duke Acacia, look at a document together. Katri's thoughts reveal that this is how he has always responded. Jean, looking serious, contemplates an unavoidable marriage proposal to the House of Duke Acacia, acknowledging its immense benefit for the Gentiana family. Jean reflects on the inevitability of marriage for both himself and Anemone someday, as a wedding dress-like garment is hinted. Despite the future marriage, Jean silently asserts his personal desire to serve as a knight. Jean closes his eyes, affirming his deep wish to serve as a knight by Anemone's side. Jean stands firmly on an ornate patterned floor, pausing in thought. A magnificent red-roofed castle stands grandly under a bright blue sky. Anemone stands by a window, looking out with a thoughtful expression and a soft sound. Jean approaches Anemone, who holds a document, calling her name. Jean smiles subtly, seated at a table with an elegant tea set, appearing calm. Jean serves Anemone a pastry, and she graciously accepts, thanking him while holding a book. Anemone smiles, noting Jean's exceptional kindness and attentiveness today, while Jean watches her in the lower panel. Jean stands respectfully beside Anemone as she enjoys her pastry. Jean smiles warmly, assuring Anemone that his attentiveness is normal and inviting her to ask for anything she needs. Jean stands near Anemone, a silent but lingering in his mind as he looks at her. Anemone smiles brightly, inviting Jean to sit with her and keep her company. Jean remains standing next to the table as Anemone sits, with tea and pastries laid out between them. Jean reflects that being with Anemone makes him feel safe, referring to her as Ryuka in his thoughts. Anemone smiles contentedly while gracefully sipping her tea. Jean sips his tea, a moment of shared tranquility amidst delicate pink flowers. Anemone looks surprised, covering her mouth, realizing Jean's words sounded like a marriage proposal. Jean and Anemone face each other, both looking visibly flustered by the unexpected turn of conversation. Anemone's eyes are wide with shock, her mouth agape in surprise. Jean's eyes show a blush, indicating shyness or embarrassment. Jean's internal thought reveals his heart races when he looks at Anemone. Jean and Anemone gaze intently at each other, a quiet moment of connection between them. Jean silently wonders when his intense feelings for Anemone began. Jean and Anemone sit intimately at the table, their hands placed close to each other. Anemone looks surprised, beginning to voice her thoughts about the value of their time together. Anemone concludes her thought, affirming that the time she spends with Jean is very precious to her. Jean's eyes are lowered, his expression reflecting a mix of shyness and contemplation. A regal, gray-haired man on a throne declares Anemone a princess and a master worthy of his devotion. Anemone looks directly out, with a surprised and slightly wide-eyed expression. Jean's eyes are filled with a serious and determined gaze. A detailed view highlights Jean's ornate uniform and shining brooch. Anemone's wide-eyed surprise dominates the frame, emphasizing her reaction. Jean and Anemone exchange awkward affirmations, with their hands nearly meeting. Anemone smiles serenely, affectionately stating that Jean is, after all, her knight. Anemone stands over a seated Jean, smiling warmly down at him. Jean sits composedly, his uniform crisp and formal. Jean walks away from a majestic castle, embarking on a new path. Jean walks, privately thinking that he is not a suitable partner for Anemone. Jean concludes he must suppress his foolish feelings and not confess them. Jean walks with purpose, holding his sword. Jean looks down, clasping his hands, questioning his ability to achieve something. Gyup! Jean clenches his fist, lamenting his inability to win the heart of someone loved by everyone. Jean walks away from the castle, vowing to hide his deep feelings within his heart. Jean's eyes show a troubled gaze, reflecting his internal conflict. Jean's internal thought reveals he has fallen deeply for Anemone. Jean stands pensive, holding his sword. Musical notes float around an elegant building, hinting at music being played inside. Anemone sings with closed eyes and clasped hands, musical notes gently floating around her. Anemone is engrossed in her singing, eyes closed, with a soft sparkle emanating around her. Anemone continues to sing in the opulent hall, while the older woman plays the grand piano. Anemone looks distressed and surprised, with a drop of sweat as she struggles with her singing. The older woman observes Anemone with a thoughtful, almost concerned expression from behind the piano. The older woman suggests to Anemone that they conclude their practice for the day. Anemone, looking downcast, firmly tells herself she needs to concentrate more. A tear rolls down Anemone's cheek. She closes her eyes in deep sadness or frustration. Anemone looks out a window, wondering if she sees a cuddle below, where Jean is sitting with a white bird. A white pigeon lands near Jean, who smiles at it, confirming Anemone's thought about the cuddle. Anemone stands near Jean, who is seated on the ground amidst flowers, as he calls out to her. Anemone looks surprised and asks Jean what brings him to this spot. Jean explains he is setting up a perimeter guard with pigeons, which Anemone finds amazing. Jean, sitting casually, recounts his past experiences raising various animals, finding it amazing to work alongside them. Anemone asks Jean if he had an animal partner, to which he confirms he did. Jean reveals his partner was a black panther named Lanella, but they were tragically separated during a rebel attack on their homeland, and he fears she may no longer be alive. Anemone offers a soft apology to Jean, looking sympathetic. Jean smiles subtly, admitting that life here feels a bit cramped, as Anemone sits nearby. Jean, with a gentle smile, invites Anemone to join him for a break. Anemone looks wide-eyed and surprised by Jean's unexpected invitation. Jean and Anemone ride horses together, soaring through a sun-dappled green landscape. Anemone gazes with wide, excited eyes as they ride, clearly enjoying the exhilaration. Jean smiles and asks Anemone if she wants to go faster, agreeing it sounds like a good idea. Anemone and Jean beam with joy as their horse gallops vigorously through the vibrant outdoors. Anemone and Jean rest by a stream, the horse drinking, and Anemone confesses she thought she was going to die. Jean smiles and asks if he scared her. Anemone beams, cheerfully declaring that she actually had a lot of fun. Anemone reflects on having been through a lot recently and feeling a bit stifled. Anemone smiles radiantly, telling Katri she feels much better thanks to him. Katri smiles warmly, expressing his genuine gladness to hear Anemone is feeling better. A grand red-roofed castle stands majestically under a bright, sparkling blue sky. A thought bubble declares a firm decision not to dwell on past matters. Anemone, looking out a window, affirms her commitment to dealing with the present challenges. Anemone expresses her anticipation to work with the older woman and is then seen in a lower panel discussing a map with a group of men. Anemone sings, with musical notes around her, as Katri smiles and suggests they take a tea break. Anemone thanks Katri, who then moves to open a window, suggesting they ventilate the room. Katri looks reflective, his gaze lowered, as his uniform brooch sparkles. A magnificent castle, with elegant purple roofs, stands under a brilliant, sunlit sky. An assembly of people sits in a grand hall, observing a regal man on a throne and a pink-haired woman beside him. One man proposes abolishing slavery due to problematic treatment, while another raises doubts about the crown princess's visit, prompting the man on the throne to furiously shout, "Enough!" The enraged man on the throne fiercely commands someone to clean up the mess. The enraged man passionately argues against abolishing slavery, stating slaves are vital to the nation's workforce, as the assembly listens intently. Catalia looks on with a thoughtful and observant expression. Catalia reclines in a lavish chair, being meticulously attended to by 3 maids who care for her feet and nails. Catalia, with an intense expression, thinks that people naturally desire to rule over others, as a maid announces her presence. Duke Acacia, with a friendly smile, waves a greeting to someone unseen. Catalia smiles and asks Duke Acacia what brings him to her. Duke Acacia, seated across from Catalia, explains his difficulties managing the Oxalis family's territory and requests her assistance in asking the crown prince for help. Catalia reflects that her father is aging, and despite her growing influence as crown princess, she has also acquired many enemies. Duke Acacia states that the dukedom's power is waning, and its lands are becoming impoverished, as Catalia observes intently. Catalia smiles broadly and brightly, her eyes sparkling. A gray-haired regal man on a lavish couch gently holds the hand of a pink-haired woman, declaring she is all he has and the only one. Catalia looks surprised with wide, intense pink eyes. Instructing someone to wash something up, 2 pairs of hands are shown washing in a bowl of soapy water as laughter sounds. Catalia expresses boredom and thinks it is time to come up with a fresh idea for fun. Catalia's wide, intense pink eyes are fixed as she firmly commands someone to wash it up. Hands wash in a soapy bowl, accompanied by laughter, while Catalia declares her boredom and decides it's time for new fun. A brown-haired man and Catalia lie intimately on a bed, with the man expressing his love and saying he needs nothing else when he has her. Catalia smiles serenely, her hand gently held by another as light sparkles around her. The brown-haired man and Catalia share a tender kiss. The older woman stands in a serene graveyard, holding flowers and thinking that she has everything. Catalia observes a peaceful graveyard, while in a flashback, a younger Catalia mischievously pours water from a bucket onto 2 surprised maids below. A brown-haired woman gently holds a younger Catalia, advising her not to play games with others. The brown-haired woman walks away with the gray-haired regal man through a green landscape, while a younger Catalia watches with a lingering feeling of not knowing. The gray-haired regal man covers his mouth in thought, reflecting on something unexpected, while younger Catalia asserts she knew it was a lie as soon as she saw it. A pink-haired girl, Catalia's sister, floats surrounded by blood, as text reveals she was murdered by their father, who wanted Catalia to be the crown princess. Catalia's eyes sparkle with a dark intensity as she thinks her sister died because she, Catalia, was chosen, while a lower panel shows Catalia at a grave. A thought bubble appears against a bright sky, expressing pity that someone was not loved. Catalia stands by a tombstone in a graveyard, reflecting on someone dying without being loved, and expresses a strong desire to see them right now. Catalia thinks about the blue-haired woman, noting she doesn't look like her but resembles her sister, finding her unpleasant yet fun to watch and declaring her a favorite. A magnificent red-roofed castle stands grandly under a bright blue sky. Anemone, with long blue hair, walks gracefully along a balcony, carrying scrolls and books. Anemone's brother and several men gather around a table with scrolls, as Anemone nervously observes them from the side. Anemone's brother, standing by a window, questions someone about being in charge of the Festival of the Holy Spirit as Anemone peeks around a column. Anemone's brother smiles brightly and asks someone to wait for a moment, surrounded by delicate flowers. Anemone sits across a large table from her brother, who smiles gently at her. Anemone and her brother sit facing each other silently, a peaceful moment passing between them. Anemone smiles with bright, happy eyes. Anemone's brother smiles and affirms his agreement, then asks Anemone if her chant is going well, to which she replies yes. Anemone looks surprised as her brother asks her what is wrong. Anemone's brother explains that Anemone is quick to take matters into her own hands and suggests she could rely on him more. Anemone looks thoughtful and slightly surprised, gazing into the distance. Anemone's brother tells her she is still his little sister and he wants to spoil her. Anemone leans her head against her brother, both smiling peacefully, surrounded by soft light. Anemone's brother gently touches her head, praising her great work and telling her it is okay to take a break. Anemone smiles with closed eyes, finding the moment embarrassing, yet calming. Anemone, standing, addresses her brother in the lower panel, asking him a question. Anemone asks her seated brother if he would like to hear what she has been practicing. Anemone sings with closed eyes, musical notes floating around her in a beautiful grand hall. Anemone's brother smiles gently, complimenting the beautiful sound. Anemone, as a baby, sleeps soundly, while a thought bubble expresses how she was such a little girl. Anemone smiles widely, reflecting on how she grew up so big before he knew it. Anemone's brother holds baby Anemone, smiling warmly as he thinks she sang him lullabies when he was a sad baby. Anemone, with clasped hands, looks happy and declares, "I love you." Anemone's brother sits on a lavish couch across from a blue-haired woman, both facing forward in a grand room. Anemone, in an ornate dress, asks what someone thinks, while two individuals below look on with surprised and impressed expressions. Anemone's brother praises Anemone's dress, saying it's very nice, while another person agrees enthusiastically. Anemone smiles brightly, noting it's a good thing she had the dress custom made. Anemone's brother looks thoughtful, gently touching his chin and muttering, Anemone looks surprised, her eyes wide as she stands in her beautiful dress. Anemone's brother, with a serious expression, tells Anemone he has something to tell her. 3 framed photos lie scattered, depicting various faceless men, suggesting a selection process or review. Anemone looks surprised, holding a pink document that is revealed to be a marriage proposal. Anemone looks concerned as her brother smiles, and she questions if the numerous documents before her are all related to this matter. Anemone, reading a book, thinks about the difficulty her brother might face and her desire to build connections with Lycol in many countries. Anemone looks wide-eyed and worried, thinking that it is hard to consider such things right now. Anemone's brother smiles reassuringly, offering to stand by until she is ready, while also thinking that the situation is unfortunate. Anemone's brother Anemone and Anemone's mother are in a room. Anemone's mother asks why he says that, as he states Their Majesty always wanted to stop these offers. Anemone's brother waves happily, while Anemone and Anemone's mother sit nearby, looking down. Anemone looks surprised as she addresses someone off-panel as Mother. Anemone, sitting with Anemone's mother, ponders how she will choose the right man when she eventually has to get married. Anemone's mother recalls a time when much was happening. Anemone's mother tells Anemone that some people accused her of planning a ducal takeover. Anemone's mother winks, stating she would be in favor if Anemone and Ryuka were to end up together. Anemone looks worried, but Anemone's mother reassures her, saying it's fine as Ryuka is the only one who hasn't noticed. Anemone's mother encourages Anemone to value her own feelings and offers her support. Anemone's chest is shown, adorned with a large necklace, surrounded by white flowers. Anemone and Anemone's mother smile warmly at each other, surrounded by a bed of white flowers. Anemone works diligently at a grand table, laden with books and papers, sitting alone by a fireplace. Anemone, with a thoughtful expression, reads a document, reflecting on her extensive experiences and the many people she has met. Catrice smiles, surrounded by a group including Anemone's brother and other men, expressing his wish to live life with no regrets. A close-up highlights Catrice's elegant uniform and sparkling brooch, alongside a tea set. Anemone smiles brightly, looking at Catrice, who stands partially visible, with a tea set on the table between them. A close-up shows Catrice smiling warmly. Much preparation has been done. Catrice smiles at Anemone, stating that compared to her brother, her highness is a little too special. Catrice's back is shown, highlighting the intricate details of his blue uniform. Anemone's hands are delicately clasped in front of her, wearing a yellow dress. A bright field of yellow flowers frames a speech bubble expressing support for Anemone's aspirations. Katri offers his full support to Anemone if she wishes to pursue something. Anemone looks surprised, her eyes wide, in a close-up of her face and chest. Catalina is shown in a red dress, holding a letter, followed by a promotional banner for Easy Manga. A close-up shows Anemone's green eyes and white-hued hair, emphasizing her thoughtful expression. Anemone's thought bubble reveals her fear of being certain of his feelings, and something even more significant. A hand writes with a quill, thanking someone, with Katri's uniform visible above. Catalina, in an elegant red dress, holds a letter and a smaller note, looking determined. Catalina's hand grips a letter, as she questions the meaning of being invited to a feast after their long-standing conflict. Catalina smiles menacingly with fierce pink eyes, declaring her intention to accept the plan. Catalina, standing elegantly in a red dress, instructs a maid to bring her a pen and paper, a picturesque view of Lycol, a bustling port city with ships and buildings under a vibrant blue sky. Correja's boot steps down, with a glimpse of his white hair below. A close-up showcases Correja's elaborate uniform and sparkling brooches. Correja, with his back to the viewer, observes the port city of Lycol, affirming so this is Lycol, as another man stands nearby. Correja stands formally before several seated regal figures on a grand platform in a lavish hall. Correja introduces himself by his full name, Correja Luna Ilna Irunar, expressing his honor to be invited. Anemone's brother smiles, extending his thanks to Correja for attending. Anemone's mother and the long-haired man sit in ornate chairs. The long-haired man offers to be Correja's guide. A close-up reveals Correja's smiling face, adorned with an ornate collar. Anemone's mother looks utterly shocked, her eyes wide with surprise. Correja smiles at Anemone's mother, who remains wide-eyed and slightly flustered. Correja, Anemone's mother, and others walk outside, with Correja praising Lycol's impressive magic, architecture, and decor, and wishing their own architects could study it too. Anemone looks surprised, thinking her accent came out a little, while Correja laughs. Correja smiles, covering his mouth playfully as he laughs. The country of Irunar is introduced as a polygamous nation, where half-brothers fought bitterly for succession. And Correja is the cheerful crown prince. Anemone looks thoughtful amidst a frame of blue flowers. Correja asks Anemone about her magic studies, and she confirms he is well aware of them. Correja smiles brightly, gesturing with his hand. Correja praises Anemone, remarking on her prettiness and strength. Anemone reacts internally to Correja's words, thinking it feels like a foul. The blonde man looks on, with a serious expression. Anemone looks startled, muttering, with Correja's eyes shown below. Correja asks Anemone where she would like to go next as they stand in a bustling street. The blonde man apologizes, explaining that Correja is a bit over the top to the brown-haired man. Correja and Anemone admire a magnificent bridge, with Correja expressing awe at the impressive technology. Correja and Anemone are at a market stall, examining yellow fruits, and Correja questions what they are. Correja smiles as internal thoughts describe him as a curious, friendly man interested in everything and a great learner. Anemone smiles, and Correja, as a chibi, expresses a desire to visit the Ministry of Magic and Town Square, while Anemone, also a chibi, offers to show him around. Correja asks if Anemone will guide him after the festival, and she agrees, making Correja happily declare it a promise. The blonde man and the black-haired man are surrounded by dark, swirling purple energy, as Anemone and Correja watch from a distance. The blonde man is engulfed in purple energy, engaging in combat. A thought bubble reveals the purple energy is Irunar's familiar. The brown-haired man expresses concern that someone is trying to kill Correja, urging him to run away amidst the growing purple energy. Correja's cape billows as he stands against the dark purple energy. Correja looks on with a focused and serious expression. Anemone raises her hand, seemingly casting a spell as light emanates from her. Correja looks shocked as Anemone emits a powerful glow. Anemone stands with an outstretched hand, a powerful light emanating, while Correja looks surprised. Correja carries Anemone, shielding her as they are enveloped by the intense energy. Anemone looks up at Correja with a worried expression, asking if he is hurt. Correja maintains a serious and determined gaze. Correja brings his hand to his chin, looking at Anemone, who appears surprised. Correja smiles, internally praising Anemone's bravery and finding her quite lovely. The black-haired man and the blonde man look on with surprised expressions. A hand firmly grips another, surrounded by soft light. Correja looks utterly shocked, his eyes wide in disbelief. Anemone's hands are clasped in front of her, surrounded by soft light and blooming flowers. Anemone looks wide-eyed and surprised.